She told the growling Alpha King, "Be quiet." He laughed and roared, "Make me." For 3 centuries, an Alpha King ruled by sound alone. His growls bent spines, his roars shattered wills. No one dared speak over him. Until a grief-stricken healer snapped 2 words that shouldn't have worked, "Be quiet." And the impossible happened. His voice died. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. And hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and join our family. Now let's get into it. The chains were too tight. That was Lillian's first coherent thought as the iron bit into her wrists, cold and unforgiving, leaving raw crescents in her skin. Her second thought came slower, heavier, weighted with the kind of exhaustion that lived in marrow. I should have run faster. But she hadn't. And now she was here. The throne room of the Bloodstone Court stretched before her like the gullet of some ancient beast, vaulted ceilings lost in shadow, walls of black stone veined with silver that caught torchlight and threw it back in fractured, glittering shards. The air tasted of smoke and iron and something else, something primal that made her wolf whimper and press low inside her chest. Fear. Not hers. Not yet. The fear of everyone else in this God's forsaken hall. Lillian could feel it rolling off them in waves, the guards flanking her with white-knuckled grips on their spears, the courtiers lining the walls with their jeweled collars and averted eyes, the advisors clustered near the dais like vultures waiting for carrion. All of them afraid, all of them silent. Because he was coming. She heard him before she saw him. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Each one a declaration. I am here. I am everything. You are nothing. The sound rolled through the hall like distant thunder, and Lillian watched, detached, almost curious in her grief-numbed state, as hardened warriors straightened their spines, as a woman in crimson silk actually trembled, as even the torches seemed to gutter and dim. Then he emerged from the shadows behind the throne. Alpha King Draven. Lillian had heard the stories. Everyone had. 300 years old, they said. Unkillable. Unmerciful. A king who'd crushed 17 rebellions, who'd torn out the throat of his own father to claim the crown, who ruled the largest pack territory in the northern hemisphere with a fist wrapped in claws and cruelty. They said his wolf was black as sin and twice as vicious. They said his eyes could strip the fight from your bones. They said a lot of things. But standing there, watching him ascend the dais with the fluid grace of a predator who'd never known fear, Lillian realized the stories had left out the most important detail. He was beautiful. Devastatingly, unnervingly, cruelly beautiful. Tall, easily 6.5 feet of corded muscle beneath black leather and ceremonial armor that looked more decorative than functional. Dark hair fell just past his shoulders, wild and unbound, framing a face that could have been carved from the same black stone as his throne. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, a mouth made for cruelty or kissing, she couldn't decide which. But his eyes. His eyes. Gold. Pure, molten gold, like honey lit from within, like the last rays of sun before a storm devoured the sky. They swept the room with casual dominance, assessing, dismissing, cataloging threats that didn't exist, because who in this hall could threaten him? Those eyes landed on Lillian. Held. Something flickered in their depths, surprise, maybe, or curiosity, gone so fast she might have imagined it. The healer, Draven said. His voice was exactly what she'd expected, deep, resonant, the kind of voice that didn't ask, it commanded. It rumbled through the stone beneath her feet, vibrated in her ribs, made her wolf flatten her ears in instinctive submission. Lillian's joy tightened. She'd bowed to no one in 6 months. Not since the night her village burned. Not since she'd held her little brother's body and felt his heart stop beating in her arms while smoke filled her lungs and silver-tipped arrows fell like rain. She wasn't about to start now. That's what they're calling me? Her voice came out rougher than intended, scraped raw from days of screaming, of crying, of being dragged across 3 territories in chains. I had a name once. It was Lillian. The silence that followed was absolute. Someone, one of the advisors, an older man with a gray beard and terror in his eyes, made a strangled sound. Your Majesty, forgive her. She doesn't understand. Silence. One word. Barely louder than a conversational tone. The advisor's mouth snapped shut so fast Lillian heard his teeth click. Draven descended the dais with liquid grace, each step measured, purposeful. He moved like violence wrapped in skin, like the moment before lightning struck, and Lillian's exhausted, grief-drunk brain supplied an unhelpful observation. He walks like he's never been told no. He probably hadn't. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could smell him, pine and smoke and something wild, something that made her wolf stir despite her better judgment. Close enough to see the flecks of amber in those impossible gold eyes, the faint scars along his knuckles, the way his gaze dragged over her face like he was reading a language only he understood. Lillian, he repeated, tasting her name like wine. His head tilted fractionally. The healer who burned down a Silverbrook outpost, who killed 4 of their guards with nothing but kitchen knives and fury, who's been running for 6 months with half the northern packs hunting her. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Tell me, Lillian, do you know what they do to rogues in my territory? Kill them. Her voice didn't shake. Small miracle. Usually after torturing them for information. Sometimes they make it quick if you're lucky. She met his gaze, held it, even though her wolf was screaming at her to lower her eyes, to submit, to survive. I stopped believing in luck around the same time I stopped believing in mercy. Something shifted in his expression. Not softening. This man probably didn't know how to soften, but adjusting. Recalculating. You don't smell like a rogue. He leaned closer, inhaling deliberately, and Lillian fought the urge to flinch. You smell like ash. And grief. And another breath, deeper. His eyes narrowed. Magic. Old magic. The kind that makes alphas nervous. Then maybe you should step back. The words left her mouth before her brain caught up. Idiot, her wolf snarled. Idiot, idiot, we're going to die. But Draven didn't strike. He laughed. Low and dark and utterly devoid of humor, the kind of laugh that meant someone was about to suffer, the kind that made the guards shift their weight and the courtiers hold their breath. Bold, he murmured, almost to himself. Then louder, addressing the room, she's been charged with murder. With arson. With theft of Silverbrook property, though I'm curious what property she allegedly stole, considering Silverbrook's alpha can't seem to provide details. His gaze never left Lillian's face. He wants her returned. Alive, preferably. Dead if necessary. I didn't steal anything, Lillian said flatly. I took my brother's body so I could bury him properly instead of letting them throw him in a mass grave like garbage. Your brother. He was 9 years old. The words tasted like blood. They killed him because he shifted for the first time during their raid on our village, and their warriors decided a child's first shift was threatening. So they put silver through his heart and told me it was protocol. The room had gone very, very still. Draven's expression was unreadable. And the outpost? Burned. Lillian's lips pulled back from her teeth, not quite a smile, not quite a snarl. With all 4 guards inside. I'm not sorry. You should be. His voice dropped an octave, and suddenly the air felt heavier, thicker, like the pressure before a storm. Sorry keeps you alive, little healer. Defiance gets you. A low, rumbling growl built in his chest. Not quite a threat. More like a warning, a flex of dominance meant to remind her exactly who she was speaking to, exactly how small she was in the shadow of his power. It resonated through the hall, through bone and blood and instinct, a sound that said kneel in a language older than words. The courtiers flinched. The guards paled. Lillian felt her wolf try to drop, try to submit, try to obey. And something inside her just snapped. Be quiet. 2 words. Flat. Exhausted. Sharp-edged with 6 months of running, of grief, of watching her world burn and being told it was protocol. The growl died. Not slowly. Not like he'd chosen to stop. It just ended. Like someone had cut the strings on a puppet. Like his voice had been a candle and she'd blown it out with a breath. Draven's eyes went wide. He opened his mouth. Nothing. His jaw worked. His throat flexed. His hand came up to his neck, fingers splaying across his windpipe like he was checking for damage, for some wound that didn't exist. No sound. The Alpha King, the male who'd ruled by roar and growl for 3 centuries, whose voice had toppled kingdoms and whose howl could shatter courage, couldn't speak. The silence stretched. Seconds. 5. 10. Then someone in the back of the hall whimpered. Draven's gaze snapped to Lillian's face, and what she saw there sent ice flooding through her veins. Shock, yes, but also rage. Pure, incandescent fury that promised violence, that promised pain, that promised she'd just signed her own death warrant in blood and stupidity. His lips peeled back from his teeth, canines elongating, eyes flashing from gold to something feral and burning, and she waited for the killing blow, for claws or fangs or whatever method kings used to erase their problems. Instead, he threw his head back and laughed. Sound returned all at once, a booming, disbelieving roar of laughter that shook the rafters and made the torches flicker. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't mocking. It was delighted. Make me, Draven roared. His voice returned as suddenly as it had vanished, rich with challenge and something else, something almost hungry. He stepped closer, towering over her, all that barely leashed power focused entirely on her face. How did you make me, little healer? Lillian stared at him. At the manic edge in his grin, the way his pupils had blown wide, the barely controlled energy vibrating through his frame like he'd just discovered fire or flight or some other impossible thing. I don't know what you're talking about, she managed. Liar. But he was still smiling, still looking at her like she was a puzzle and a prize and a problem all wrapped in chains and defiance. You silenced me. An Alpha King. With 2 words, and he inhaled sharply, and his eyes narrowed to slits. Voice binding. The word fell like a stone into still water. Ripples of shock, of recognition, of terror spread through the court. Lillian's heart stopped. That's impossible, someone whispered. Voice binders are extinct. The last one died 200 years ago, everyone knows. Everyone, Draven interrupted softly, dangerously, is wrong. He reached out slowly, giving her time to flinch, to pull away, and caught her chin between his thumb and forefinger. His touch was surprisingly gentle, at odds with the violence simmering in his eyes. Tell me, Lillian, he murmured, and his voice had gone low and rough, intimate in a way that made her skin prickle. When did you first realize you could make alphas? Shut up? She should lie. She should spit in his face, should snarl, should do anything but answer honestly. But she was so tired. I didn't, Lillian whispered. Not until 30 seconds ago. I just wanted you to stop growling at me like I'm something you're about to break. Oh, little healer. His thumb brushed along her jaw, and despite everything, the chains, the fear, the exhaustion, her traitorous body shivered. If I wanted to break you, you'd already be shattered. He released her, stepped back, turned to face his court with his hands clasped behind his back, every inch the monarch, the predator, the king who'd never lost a battle or bent a knee. Take the chains off, he ordered. Your Majesty, the gray-bearded advisor started. Now. The guards scrambled to obey. Cold iron fell away from Lillian's wrists, clattering to the stone floor, and she flexed her fingers, wincing at the sting of returning circulation. Part of her wanted to run. A larger part knew she wouldn't make it 3 steps. Draven's gaze found hers again. You're not a prisoner, he said. Anymore. You're a guest. My personal guest. His smile was all teeth. Which means you answer to me. You stay where I tell you to stay. You come when I call. And you definitely don't use that pretty little gift of yours on anyone else in this court without my explicit permission. And if I refuse? Then Silverbrook's alpha gets his wish, and I return your body in pieces. He paused. After I've figured out exactly what you are and how your magic works. Probably through extensive experimentation. It won't be pleasant. Lillian swallowed hard. That's what I thought. Draven gestured to a female warrior standing near the dais, tall, blonde, with scars crossing her cheek and murder in her hazel eyes. Kara will show you to your chambers. You'll bathe, eat, rest. Tomorrow, you and I are going to have a very long, very detailed conversation about voice binding, about what happened in Silverbrook, and about why the gods saw fit to drop an extinct bloodline into my court wrapped in chains and bad decisions. He turned away, dismissing her with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never doubted his control. Then, just before he reached the throne, he glanced back over his shoulder. Those gold eyes pinned her in place. Oh, and Lillian? His voice dropped to a purr. If you ever tell me to be quiet again? His smile widened, sharp and promising. You'd better be prepared for the consequences. Because next time... He leaned closer, and she caught that scent again, pine and smoke and wild things. I might just make you scream instead. The threat or promise, she couldn't tell which, hung in the air like smoke. Then he was gone, disappearing through a doorway behind the throne, leaving Lillian standing in a pool of torchlight with her heart hammering and her wolf utterly, helplessly confused. Because she'd just silenced an Alpha King. She'd just survived something that should have killed her. And somehow, impossibly, she had a feeling her life had just gotten infinitely more complicated. Kara approached with measured steps, her expression unreadable. Come on, healer, she said quietly. Not unkindly. Best not keep him waiting when he's in a mood. And trust me, she glanced toward the door Draven had vanished through. He's definitely in a mood. Lillian followed. What other choice did she have? But as they climbed the winding stairs toward the guest chambers, as torchlight gave way to moonlight streaming through arched windows, one thought circled her exhausted mind like a wolf on a hunt. What the hell just happened? And more importantly, what am I? The chambers were obscene. That was Lillian's first thought as Kara pushed open the heavy oak doors and gestured her inside with a grunt that might have been sympathy or amusement, hard to tell with warriors. The room sprawled before her like something out of a fever dream, vaulted ceilings painted with constellations in gold leaf, walls draped in midnight blue silk that rippled like water in the firelight, a bed large enough to sleep 6 people comfortably. Or one very possessive wolf, her brain supplied unhelpfully, and windows, God's windows, stretching from floor to ceiling with a view of the Bloodstone Mountains that stole what little breath she had left. It was beautiful. It was a cage. A gilded, luxurious, obvious cage. Bathing rooms through there, Kara said, nodding toward a doorway to the left. Fresh clothes in the wardrobe. Food'll be brought up within the hour. Cook's been informed you're not to be poisoned, so that's something. She paused, her scarred face softening fractionally. Locks on the inside of the door. You want privacy, you got it. But if you try the windows. Let me guess, Lillian said tiredly. 50-foot drop onto rocks, guards patrolling below, and even if I survived the fall, I wouldn't make it past the outer wall. 60-foot drop, actually. But yeah, you got the gist. Kara's lips twitched. Almost a smile. For what it's worth. You've got guts. Stupid, suicidal guts, but guts nonetheless. Nobody's talked to His Majesty like that in, well, ever, probably. Is that supposed to make me feel better? Nope. Just stating facts. The warrior turned to leave, then hesitated. Look, I don't know what you are or what you did down there, but a word of advice? The king's not what the stories say. He's worse in some ways, better in others. But he's never brought anyone to guest chambers instead of the dungeons. which means you're either incredibly valuable. Her hazel eyes met Lillian's, sharp with warning. Or incredibly dangerous. Maybe both. Figure out which before someone else does. Then she was gone, the door clicking shut with a finality that made Lillian's chest tight. Silence pressed in. She stood there, dirty, exhausted, still able to feel the phantom weight of chains on her wrists, and tried to process the last hour of her life. Failed spectacularly. I silenced an Alpha King. The thought kept circling, relentless. I silenced him, and he laughed. That was the part that didn't make sense. She'd expected rage, violence, death, the usual alpha response to disrespect. Instead, Draven had looked at her like she'd just handed him a gift. Like she was a prize. Voice binding. The word tasted like ash and old magic on her tongue. Lillian crossed to the windows, pressing her palms against the cool glass. Below, the Bloodstone Court sprawled in organized chaos, training yards where warriors sparred even in moonlight, gardens gone silver and strange under the stars, walls thick enough to withstand sieges, and beyond, far beyond, the dark line of forest that marked the edge of civilized pack lands. Home was out there somewhere. Or what was left of it. Stop, she told herself firmly. Don't think about Ashbrook. Don't think about Finn's smile, or the way he used to steal honey cakes from the kitchen, or how small he looked in your arms when he... A knock at the door saved her from the spiral. Food, a voice called. Young, female, nervous. Lillian turned away from the window and its dangerous thoughts. Come in. The girl who entered couldn't have been more than 17, all gangling limbs and wide brown eyes, carrying a tray laden with enough food to feed a small army. She set it on the low table near the fireplace with exaggerated care, like she was handling explosives. Cook sent roasted chicken, fresh bread, winter vegetables, cheese, fruit, and, there's wine if you want it, but also water and tea because she wasn't sure what you'd prefer, and she said if you don't like any of it to just say so and she'll make something else, and... The girl's words tumbled out in a rush, then stopped abruptly when she finally looked at Lillian properly. Her eyes went huge. You're the one who made the king stop talking, she whispered, awed and terrified in equal measure. Everyone's saying you're a voice binder. That you could control any alpha in the kingdom if you wanted. That you're... I'm exhausted, Lillian interrupted gently because the girl looked about 3 seconds from fainting. And hungry. And definitely not whatever the rumors are turning me into. What's your name? Daisy, miss. I help in the kitchens mostly, but sometimes I bring meals to important guests, and Lady Kara said you were very important, and I wasn't to bother you with questions, but she bit her lip. Is it true? Can you really silence alphas? Lillian sank into the chair beside the table, exhaustion hitting her all at once. Honestly, I have no idea. She reached for the bread, tore off a piece, stuffed it in her mouth before she could think too hard about how long it had been since she'd eaten real food. It tasted like heaven. Before today, I didn't even know voice binding was real. I thought it was a myth. A story parents told to scare disobedient pups. But you did it. Daisy crept closer, fascination overriding fear. You told the Alpha King to be quiet, and he actually stopped. Nobody can make him stop. He's the loudest, scariest, most, she caught herself. I mean, he's His Majesty. He's, terrifying. Well, yes. Daisy's voice dropped to a whisper. But also kind of, not? Like, he executed Lord Brennan last month for beating his Omega mate, and everyone was too scared to report it, but His Majesty found out anyway and made an example. And he funds the orphanages, all of them, across every territory, out of his personal coffers. And he never asks pack members to do anything he wouldn't do himself, which is why he trains with the warriors every morning and why he... She stopped abruptly, like she just realized she was gossiping about her king to a stranger. To a dangerous stranger. Sorry, Daisy mumbled. I talk too much. Lady Kara says it'll get me in trouble someday. Lady Kara sounds wise. Lillian studied the girl, the open, earnest face, the way her hands twisted in her apron. How long have you worked here? 3 years. Since I was 14. My parents died in a rogue attack, and His Majesty took me in. Gave me a place, a job, protection. Her chin lifted slightly. He's not what people think. The stories make him sound like a monster, but he's just lonely, I think. Lillian nearly choked on her bread. Lonely? The Alpha King who rules half the northern territories by fear and fury is lonely. That's what makes people lonely, miss. The fear. The fury. When everyone's too scared to talk to you like you're a person instead of a walking death sentence. Daisy shrugged. Well, that's lonely, isn't it? The simple wisdom hit harder than it should have. Before Lillian could respond, footsteps echoed in the hallway, heavy, measured, purposeful. Daisy's face went pale. I have to go. I'm not supposed to linger, and if he finds me gossiping. Daisy. The voice rolled through the door like distant thunder. Draven's voice. The girl squeaked, actually squeaked, and bolted for the exit. She yanked the door open and nearly crashed into a wall of black leather and muscle and barely contained alpha dominance. Your Majesty. Daisy dropped into a curtsy so fast she almost toppled. I was just the food she needed. Breathe before you pass out. Draven's tone held a hint of amusement. And stop apologizing. You haven't done anything wrong. His gold eyes flicked past her to where Lillian sat frozen, bread halfway to her mouth. Yet, Daisy fled. Lillian couldn't blame her. The Alpha King filled the doorway like a storm filling the sky, all coiled power and predatory grace, changed out of his formal armor into simple black pants and a loose white shirt that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. His dark hair was still unbound, falling around his face in a way that should have softened his features, but only emphasized the sharp lines, the brutal beauty. He stepped inside, closed the door. Lillian's wolf stirred nervously. You're supposed to be resting, Draven said mildly, crossing to the fireplace with the casual arrogance of someone who owned everything in the room, including her. Not interrogating my staff about my character. I wasn't. Daisy's voice carries. These walls are thick, but not that thick. He glanced at the tray, at the half-eaten bread in her hand. Eat. You look like you haven't had a proper meal in months. 6 months, Lillian said before she could stop herself. Give or take. Something flickered in his expression. Since Ashbrook. It wasn't a question. She set the bread down carefully, suddenly not hungry. You know about Ashbrook. I know Silverbrook's Alpha led a peacekeeping mission into neutral territory 6 months ago. I know an entire village burned. I know the official report claimed rogue activity and minimal casualties. He moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back, staring out at his kingdom. I also know that report was a lie. There were no rogues. Just a border dispute over hunting grounds, and Alpha Garrett decided to make an example. Lillian's hands curled into fists. He killed children, she whispered. Called it neutralizing future threats. Burned homes with families still inside. My brother shifted for the first time 9 years old and terrified, and they put silver through his heart like it was protocol. It's not. The words were flat. Final. Protocol allows for restraint and relocation of juveniles exhibiting unexpected shifts. It does not allow for execution. Draven turned to face her, and the firelight caught in his eyes, turned them molten. Garrett exceeded his authority. Committed war crimes on neutral land. By pack law, I should have had him executed months ago. Then why didn't you? Because I didn't have proof. His jaw tightened. Just conflicting reports, convenient fires that destroyed evidence, and witnesses who suddenly couldn't remember what they'd seen. Silverbrook's lawyers are excellent. Garrett's father sits on the High Council. And without concrete evidence of wrongdoing. He trailed off, but Lillian understood. Politics. Power. The same games that let monsters wear crowns. But now you have me, she said slowly. A survivor. A witness. Now I have you, he agreed. A voice finder. The first in 2 centuries. A woman who can silence alphas with a word, who could, theoretically, control them entirely if the old texts are accurate. His gaze pinned her in place. Which makes you either the most valuable asset I've ever acquired, or the most dangerous threat I've ever faced. And which do you think I am? I think, Draven said softly, dangerously, crossing the space between them until he stood close enough that she had to tilt her head back to hold his gaze, that you're both. I think you're broken and furious and running on spite and grief. I think you burned down that outpost because watching it turn to ash was the only thing that made you feel anything other than hollow. His hand came up slowly, giving her time to flinch away, and brushed a strand of dirty blonde hair from her face. I think you have no idea what you're capable of, he murmured. And I think that terrifies you almost as much as it excites me. Lillian's breath caught. Why? The word came out rough. Why does it excite you? Any sane alpha would kill me before I became a problem. Any sane alpha, Draven agreed, doesn't spend 3 centuries being told their voice is their greatest weapon, only to have a half-starved healer shut them up with 2 words and an annoyed expression. His thumb traced along her jaw, gentle, searching, completely at odds with the predator in his eyes. You want the truth, little healer? I'm intrigued. Fascinated. I've fought wars, conquered territories, broken rebellions, and bedded more beautiful creatures than I can count, and nothing has surprised me in over 100 years. His smile was sharp enough to cut. Then you stumble into my court in chains, looking like death warmed over, and you do the impossible. He leaned closer, and she caught his scent again, pine and smoke, and something wild that made her wolf whine. So yes, he breathed against her ear, I'm excited. Because you're either going to kill me, save me, or drive me absolutely insane. And I haven't felt this alive since before I took the crown. He pulled back. The loss of his warmth felt like a shock. Rest, Draven ordered, all business again, as if he hadn't just unraveled her with words and proximity and impossible honesty. Tomorrow, we test your abilities properly. I have questions. You'll have answers. And then we'll figure out exactly what to do with a voice binder in a world that thought her kind extinct. He strode toward the door, paused with his hand on the frame. Oh, and Lillian? One more thing. She couldn't have spoken if she tried. That gift of yours? His gold eyes glittered with something dark and promising. Don't use it on me again unless you mean it. Because the next time you tell me to be quiet. His smile was all wolf. I'm going to make you beg me to speak. Then he was gone, the door closing with a soft click that sounded too much like finality. Lillian stood there, heart pounding, skin still tingling where he'd touched her, and tried to remember how to breathe. What the hell am I doing? Her wolf had no answer. Just a low, confused whine that might have been fear. Or might have been something far more dangerous. Lillian dreamed of fire. She always dreamed of fire. But tonight, the flames had gold eyes and a voice that promised both salvation and damnation, and when she woke, gasping, sweating, tangled in silk sheets she didn't recognize, the sun was already painting the mountains crimson, and someone was pounding on her door. Up. Kara's voice, sharp and amused. His Majesty wants you in the training yards. You've got 20 minutes to make yourself presentable. Lillian groaned into the pillow. 20 minutes. She rolled out of bed, stumbled to the bathing room, marble and gold and a tub large enough to drown in. Gods, this place was obscene, and splashed cold water on her face until she felt marginally human. The wardrobe yielded practical clothes, leather pants, a simple tunic, boots that actually fit, and she dressed quickly, braided her hair back with fingers that only shook a little. Her reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger, too thin, too pale, eyes haunted by ghosts she couldn't bury. You're a voice binder, she told that stranger. Apparently. Whatever that means. The stranger didn't look convinced. Kara was waiting in the hallway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "You look like death," the warrior observed. "But functional death. Come on." They descended through the castle, endless corridors of black stone and silver veins, past servants who stopped and stared, past guards who tracked her movement like she might explode at any second. Word had spread fast. The training yard sprawled behind the main keep, packed dirt, weapons racks, sparring circles marked with rope and chalk, and wolves, dozens of them, warriors going through combat drills with brutal efficiency. And in the center of it all, shirtless and magnificent and absolutely unfair, Draven. He moved through sword forms like violence made poetry, all lethal grace and controlled power, sweat gleaming on bronze skin, muscles shifting beneath scars that mapped a lifetime of battles. His dark hair was pulled back in a leather tie, exposing the strong column of his throat, the sharp line of his jaw. Lillian's mouth went dry. "Focus," she told herself firmly. "He's an alpha. A king. A man who could kill you without blinking." But gods, he was beautiful. Draven finished his form, lowered the blade, and his gold eyes found hers across the yard. He smiled. Slow, predatory, knowing. "Lillian," he called, voice carrying easily over the clash of steel. "How kind of you to join us. I was beginning to think you'd decided to take your chances with the 60-foot drop after all." Several warriors snickered. She lifted her chin. "I considered it." The rocks seemed friendlier. More laughter, genuine this time. Draven's smile widened. He tossed his sword to a nearby warrior and stalked toward her with that liquid, dangerous grace that made her wolf sit up and pay attention. He stopped close enough that she had to crane her neck back. Friendly, he mused. Interesting word choice. His gaze dragged over her face, assessing. "Sleep well." "Not particularly." "Nightmares." "Memories." Same difference. Something soft, almost gentle, flickered in his expression. "I know the feeling." Before she could process that, he turned to address the watching crowd. "Listen up." His voice cracked like a whip. "This is Lillian. She's my guest, under my protection, and if I hear any of you giving her trouble, spreading rumors, or making her feel unwelcome, I'll personally ensure you spend a week cleaning the latrines. With your tongues." "Clear." A chorus of "Yes, Your Majesty" rippled through the yard. "Good." He glanced back at Lillian. "Now, let's see what you can do." Her stomach dropped. "I told you, I don't know how I did it. It just happened. Then we'll make it happen again." Controlled environment. Willing subjects. His eyes glittered with anticipation. "Science, little healer. We're going to figure out exactly what you are." "What I am." The words settled in her chest like stones. "And if I can't do it again?" Lillian asked quietly. "If it was a fluke?" A one-time thing triggered by exhaustion and terror. Draven leaned down until his mouth was level with her ear. Then he murmured, voice dropping to a purr that sent shivers down her spine. "I'll just have to keep making you angry until it happens again." He pulled back, winked, actually winked, the bastard, and strode to the center of the nearest sparring circle. "Kara," he called. "You're up." The scarred warrior stepped forward, rolling her shoulders, a wicked grin on her face. "Try not to break her, boss," she said. "She looks fragile." "I'm not," Lillian started. Kara's eyes flashed gold. A growl built in her throat, deep, resonant, the sound of an alpha asserting dominance. It rolled across the yard like physical force, made several younger wolves drop their heads instinctively. Lillian felt it hit her like a wave. Submit, kneel, obey. Her wolf whimpered. But something else stirred beneath her breastbone. Something old and strange and angry at being pushed, being commanded, being. "Stop," Lillian snapped. The word punched through the air like a fist. Kara's growl choked off mid-sound. Her eyes went wide. She pawed at her throat, mouth working soundlessly. The yard went silent. Lillian stared at her hands like they belonged to someone else. I did it again. Draven laughed, delighted, triumphant, and the sound broke the spell. Kara's voice returned with a gasp. What the fuck? Language, Draven chided, but he was grinning like a wolf with a fresh kill. He crossed to Lillian in 3 long strides. Do you feel it? The magic? Where does it come from? I don't. Lillian pressed a hand to her chest, where something pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Here, I think. It feels like heat. Like anger, but colder. Like power, Draven finished. His hand covered hers, pressing her palm flat against her sternum. Your wolf. Silent. This isn't her. It's something else. The voice whined. His eyes were fever bright. Again. Do it again. I need someone to. Use me. The words hung between them. Lillian shook her head. That's insane. You're the king. What if you can? He gripped her shoulders, and the intensity in his gaze stole her breath. What if you're the only person in 3 centuries who can shut me up? The only one who can. He trailed off, and something vulnerable flickered across his face. The only one who can make me listen instead of command. Draven. Do it. It wasn't quite an order. More like a plea wrapped in steel. Command me, little healer. Tell me to be silent. Let's see if it works when I'm ready for it. Lillian's heart hammered. This was stupid. Reckless. Dangerous in ways she couldn't articulate. But the look in his eyes, desperate and hungry and curious, made her want to try. She pulled back, creating space, and met his gaze. Growl, she said. Draven's lips curved. Then he threw his head back and roared, a sound that shook the ground, that made warriors flinch, that promised violence and dominance and absolute authority. Lillian let it wash over her. Let it build. Let her wolf cower and that strange, cold heat rise in her chest. Then she spoke. One word, quiet as a breath, sharp as a blade. Silence. The roar died. Draven's mouth snapped shut. His eyes went wide not with fear, but with wonder. He tried to speak, lips forming words that wouldn't come, and the frustration in his expression warred with something else. Something almost like relief. Lillian's hands shook. How do I undo it? The answer came instinctively. Release him. Let go. She exhaled slowly. Speak. Sound returned like a dam breaking. Incredible, Draven finished, as if he'd never stopped. He grabbed her face between his hands and kissed her forehead, quick, fierce, entirely inappropriate. You magnificent, impossible, perfect creature. Do you have any idea what this means? Lillian's brain had short-circuited somewhere around the kiss. That I'm dangerous? That you're necessary. He released her, began pacing, energy vibrating through every line of his body. The old text spoke of voice binders as mediators. Peacekeepers. The only beings who could negotiate with rogue alphas, settle disputes without bloodshed, force communication when violence was the easier path. He turned back to her, eyes blazing. You're not a weapon, Lillian. You're a bridge. A translator between alpha arrogance and actual diplomacy. His smile was wild, brilliant. You're exactly what this kingdom needs. What I need. To do what? To change everything. The words fell like prophecy. And Lillian, standing in a training yard surrounded by warriors who looked at her like she was something between miracle and monster, realized with creeping certainty. Her life would never be simple again. The war room smelled like old leather and older secrets. Lillian stood at the edge of the massive table, feeling desperately out of place among the assembled wolves, pack alphas, military commanders, advisors whose combined age probably exceeded a millennium. They watched her with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility to barely concealed fear. She couldn't blame them. 3 days. That's how long she'd been in the Bloodstone Court. 3 days of testing her abilities under Draven's relentless supervision, of silencing warriors and guards and anyone foolish enough to volunteer. 3 days of discovering that her power had limits. She could hold an alpha silent for maybe 30 seconds before exhaustion hit, could only bind 3 wolves at once before her nose started bleeding, but also discovering that those limits were flexible. Growing. Like a muscle being trained. Gentlemen, Draven said from the head of the table, voice carrying that casual authority that made grown alphas straighten their spines. And ladies, let's not forget Commander Mara. He nodded to a steel-haired woman whose scars told stories Lillian didn't want to know. You've all heard the rumors by now. Allow me to confirm them. He gestured to Lillian like she was a prized artifact. This is Lillian Ashwood, last surviving member of the Ashbrook Village massacre. She is also, as of 3 days ago, a confirmed voice binder, the first of her kind in 2 centuries. Murmurs rippled through the room. Not all friendly. Your Majesty, a silver-bearded alpha spoke up, Lord Brennan's replacement, if Lillian remembered correctly. With respect, the voice binders were eradicated for a reason. They were dangerous, unpredictable, capable of enslaving entire packs if left unchecked. They were also, Draven countered smoothly, the reason we had 70 years of relative peace during the Covenant era. Before fear and politics decided magic was more threatening than useful. Magic that can control alphas. Influence, Lillian interrupted, surprising herself. All eyes swiveled to her. She forced her voice steady. Not control. I can silence. I can stop a command in its tracks. But I can't make anyone do anything. I can't force submission or obedience. I can just make you listen. By robbing us of our voices, another alpha growled. By stealing our most basic form of dominance. By leveling the playing field, Draven corrected, his tone sharp enough to cut. Tell me, Alpha Garrett, oh wait. He's not here, is he? Because he's been dodging my summons for 6 months while hiding behind council lawyers and fabricated reports. The room went tense. Which brings me to why we're all here. Draven spread his hands on the table, leaning forward. Silverbrook has been operating beyond its authority. Killing on neutral lands. Covering up war crimes. And I finally have a witness who can testify to the massacre at Ashbrook. He looked at Lillian, something almost gentle in those gold eyes. If she's willing. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. To stay silent. To not paint a bigger target on her back than already existed. But then she thought of Finn. Of his smile, his laughter, the way he'd begged her to teach him to shift properly, to control the wolf that terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. The way he'd died screaming. I'll testify, Lillian said quietly. I'll tell the council everything Garrett did. Everything I saw. You'd be putting yourself at considerable risk, Commander Mara said, not unkindly. Garrett has resources. Allies. If you publicly accuse him of war crimes, he'll try to kill me. I know. Lillian's joy tightened. He's been trying for 6 months anyway. At least this way, my death might actually mean something. You're not going to die. Draven's voice was flat. Final. I'm not in the habit of letting valuable assets get murdered before they're useful. How romantic, Lillian muttered. Several alphas bit back smiles. The council meets in 2 weeks, Draven continued. In neutral territory, the Covenant grounds, per tradition. We'll present Lillian's testimony, along with evidence I've been gathering independently. With a voice binder to ensure Garrett can't simply alpha command his way through questioning. His smile was sharp as a blade. He won't be able to lie his way out. And the council will have no choice but to act. Unless they decide the voice binder is a bigger threat than one rogue alpha, the silver-bearded councilman said softly. Magic like hers hasn't been seen in generations, Your Majesty. There are those on the council who will argue she should be contained, studied, or eliminated if she proves too dangerous. Ice flooded Lillian's veins. Then it's fortunate, Draven said, his voice dropping to something cold and lethal, that she's under my protection. And anyone who tries to harm her will answer to me personally. The promise hung in the air like a blade. We leave in 10 days, he continued. Commander Mara, I want an advanced security detail at the Covenant grounds, sweep for threats, check all entry points, ensure our delegation has secure quarters. Kara, you'll oversee Lillian's personal guard. She doesn't go anywhere without at least 3 warriors. I don't need, Lillian started. You do. Draven's gaze pinned her. Garrett knows you're alive by now. He knows you're here. And he knows exactly what you represent, the end of his comfortable impunity. He will try something. Let him, Lillian said, with more bravado than she felt. I survived 6 months alone. I can handle. The door to the war room slammed open. A young guard stumbled through, chest heaving, eyes wild. Your Majesty, he gasped for air. Perimeter breach. South Gate. Silverbrook Wolves. They're demanding, he swallowed hard. They're demanding you turn over the Ashwood girl for crimes against their pack. Silence fell like a hammer. Then Draven moved. Fast. Too fast for a man his size. He was across the room in 3 strides, gripping the guard's shoulder. How many? 20. Maybe more. Alpha Garrett himself is leading them. Someone swore viciously. This is an act of war, Commander Mara said, already moving toward the door. Coming armed to another Alpha's territory, making demands. It's a test, Draven corrected, his voice deadly calm. He wants to see if I'll hand her over. If I value peace more than principles. His gold eyes found Lillian's across the room. He's about to be very disappointed. Your Majesty, the silver-bearded councilman looked genuinely worried now. If you refuse him publicly, Silverbrook will have grounds to claim you're harboring a criminal. They could appeal to the High Council, could argue. I don't care. Draven's words were ice. Lillian stays. Garrett can lodge a formal complaint at the council meeting like a civilized wolf, or he can fuck off back to his territory before I decide his presence here constitutes invasion. He strode toward the exit, then paused. Looked back at Lillian. Stay here. Don't leave this room. Kara. On it, boss. The scarred warrior materialized at Lillian's side, hand on her sword hilt. I should come with you, Lillian said, hating how small her voice sounded. This is about me. I should. You should stay alive. Draven's expression softened fractionally. Trust me, little healer. I've been handling territorial disputes since before your grandparents were born. Garrett is a bully and a coward. And bullies don't respond well to being told no in front of an audience. He flashed a smile that was all teeth and danger. I'm going to enjoy this. Then he was gone, taking half the war council with him. The room felt suddenly too large and too small at once. Lillian sank into the nearest chair, hands shaking. He came for me, she whispered. Garrett actually came here. Did you think he wouldn't? Kara leaned against the table, arms crossed. You're a loose end. A witness. And now, apparently, a walking myth with the power to silence alphas. Of course he came. Question is... She paused, head tilting like she was listening to something. What's the question? Lillian asked. Whether he came to retrieve you, or to kill you before you could talk. The south courtyard was chaos wrapped in tension. Draven emerged from the main keep to find his warriors already assembled, 24 of his best, armed and ready, forming a loose semicircle around the intruders. And intruders was the right word for what he was seeing. 20 Silverbrook wolves, all in fighting leathers, all armed, standing in his courtyard like they had a right to be there. Several had partially shifted, eyes glowing, claws extended, a clear threat display that made his own wolf snarl in offense. And at the center of them, looking insufferably smug, Alpha Marcus Garrett. Tall, broad-shouldered, with copper hair and cold green eyes, he wore authority like a badly fitted suit, all surface and no substance. He was young for an alpha, barely a century old, the kind of wolf who'd inherited power rather than earning it. The kind who thought birthright equaled strength. Draven, Garrett called out, spreading his arms in mock friendliness. Apologies for the unexpected visit. But when I heard you were harboring a murderer, I felt it was my duty as a fellow Alpha to invade my territory with armed warriors. Draven descended the steps slowly, deliberately, letting silence stretch. To make demands in my own courtyard? To imply, perhaps, that I don't know how to handle matters of pack law. Garrett's smile flickered. You're merely about 3 seconds from having your throat torn out for insubordination. Draven's voice didn't rise, but it cut through the courtyard like winter wind. I am an Alpha King, Garrett. Not your equal. Not your peer. You're superior in every way that matters. And you will address me as such, or you will address me bleeding. The copper-haired Alpha's jaw tightened. Your Majesty, he ground out. I've come to request the return of a criminal. The girl who burned your outpost after you murdered her 9-year-old brother and 23 other civilians in an illegal raid on neutral territory? Draven smiled pleasantly. That criminal? Garrett's eyes flashed. I don't know what lies she's been filling your head with. Lies. Draven took a step forward. Then another. Slow. Predatory. Interesting word choice. Because I have witness statements. I have burn patterns consistent with accelerant use on residential buildings. I have a mass grave your wolves dug poorly enough that 3 bodies washed up in the river. He was close now, close enough to smell Garrett's expensive cologne trying to mask the scent of nerves. I have evidence of 18 separate code violations, 6 breaches of territorial agreement, and enough material to have you stripped of your title and executed for war crimes. The only thing I don't have is video footage of you personally ordering the massacre. His smile sharpened. But I have the next best thing. I have a survivor. A rogue, Garrett spat. A criminal. A woman with magic that shouldn't exist. Magic you're afraid of, Draven interrupted softly. Because she can do something no one else can, make you tell the truth. The courtyard had gone deathly still. Garrett's hand drifted toward his sword. I don't have to listen to this. By pack law, you're required to turn over suspected criminals to their home territory for judgment. Lillian Ashwood is mine too. She's mine. The words cracked like a whip. Draven hadn't meant to say it quite like that, possessive and absolute and leaving no room for interpretation, but the moment the words left his mouth, he knew they were true. She's mine. His to protect. His to shield. His to... He shut down that line of thought viciously. She's under my protection, he amended, voice cold. As a witness in an ongoing High Council investigation. She will testify at the Covenant grounds in 2 weeks. And if you have objections, you can raise them there, through proper channels, like a civilized alpha instead of a territorial brat throwing a tantrum. Garrett's face flushed crimson. You can't. I can. I am. I just did. Draven gestured toward the gate. Now get the fuck out of my territory before I decide this little incursion warrants a formal complaint to the council. Or worse, before I let my warriors show you what happens to wolves who threaten what's mine. Around the courtyard, his soldiers growled in unison. The sound was primal. Unified. Absolutely loyal. Garrett looked at them, at Draven, and whatever he saw in the Alpha King's eyes made him take a step back. This isn't over, he said, but his voice had lost its confidence. You're right. Draven's smile was all wolf now. In 2 weeks, at the Covenant grounds, you'll answer for every life you took at Ashbrook. Every child you murdered. Every law you broke. He leaned in close enough to whisper. And Lillian is going to look you in the eye and tell the entire council exactly what kind of monster you are. And there's not a damn thing you can do to stop her. He pulled back. Kara, escort these guests to the border. Ensure they understand that if they set foot in Bloodstone territory again without invitation, they'll be treated as hostile invaders. With pleasure, Your Majesty. Kara materialized from the shadows, grinning like violence. Garrett opened his mouth, probably to make some parting threat, some alpha posturing, but Draven was already walking away. Dismissed. Irrelevant. Beneath notice. He could feel Garrett's fury radiating at his back, could sense the younger alpha's wolf bristling with humiliation. Good. Let him seethe. Let him realize exactly what he was up against. Because Draven had meant every word. Lillian was his now, his responsibility, his witness, his something. He hadn't figured out what yet. But the surge of protectiveness that had roared through him when Garrett demanded her return? That wasn't strategy. That was instinct. And that was a problem. He left. Lillian looked up from where she'd been wearing a path in the war room carpet to find Draven in the doorway, hair slightly mussed, eyes still burning with residual fury. Garrett, she asked unnecessarily. Alive, unfortunately. Though he won't be making that mistake again. He crossed to the sideboard, poured 2 glasses of amber liquid, and held one out to her. Drink. You look like you're about to shatter. She took it with shaking hands. What did he want? You. Dead or alive, though I suspect he'd prefer dead given that corpses don't testify. Draven downed his drink in one swallow. I told him to fuck off. Diplomatically. Despite everything, Lillian felt her lips twitch. Diplomatically. I used complete sentences. That's diplomatic for me. He set his glass down, and some of the fury drained from his posture. He'll try again. Not here, even Garrett's not stupid enough to assault the Bloodstone Court directly. But on the road. At the Covenant grounds. Anywhere he thinks he can make it look like an accident. So I'm bait. You're protected. Draven closed the distance between them, and Lillian fought the urge to step back. I won't let him touch you, Lillian. I swear it on my crown, my territory, my... He stopped abruptly. Their eyes met. And something shifted in the air between them, something that had been building since that first moment in the throne room, since he'd laughed instead of killing her, since she'd discovered she could silence the unkillable king. Why? The word escaped before Lillian could stop it. Why do you care? I'm a stranger. A liability. You could hand me over and avoid a potential war with Silverbrook. You could. I could do a lot of things, Draven interrupted softly. His hand came up, fingers brushing her cheek with surprising gentleness. I could be smart. Strategic. Put politics over principles. His thumb traced her lower lip, and her breath caught. But then I'd be just another alpha who lets monsters like Garrett operate with impunity. Who looks the other way when children are murdered because it's convenient. Who values peace over justice. His gold eyes held hers, intense and burning. I won't be that king, Lillian. I can't be. Not anymore. Why not anymore? She whispered. He smiled, sad and raw and far too honest. Because you looked at me in that throne room and told me to be quiet. And for the first time in 300 years, someone saw me as something other than a weapon or a monster. His hand cupped her face fully now. You saw a man who could listen. And I. The door burst open again. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers. Commander Mara stood in the entrance, her expression grim. Your Majesty. We have a problem. Of course we do, Draven muttered. What now? Message from the High Council. They've moved up the meeting date. She held out a sealed scroll, and even from across the room, Lillian could see the official wax seal. We have 5 days. Not 2 weeks. 5 days to get to the Covenant grounds and prepare your case. Draven's jaw tightened. He took the scroll, scanned it, and swore viciously. This is Garrett's doing. He called in favors. He crushed the parchment in his fist. He wants us scrambling. Unprepared. Vulnerable on the road. It's going to take 3 days hard travel to reach the grounds, Mara said. That leaves us almost no time to set up security, to verify our accommodations to... Then we leave tonight. Draven's voice was steel. Immediate departure. I want our fastest riders, our best warriors, and every advantage we can manufacture. He turned to Lillian, and she saw determination warring with something else in his expression. Something that looked almost like fear. 5 days, he said quietly. That's all we have to get you to the council alive and whole. To bring Garrett to justice. To prove that a voice binder isn't a threat, but a necessity. He moved closer, caught her hand in his. Can you do this? Testify in front of the most powerful alphas in the Northern Territories? Face Garrett with nothing but your words and your truth. Lillian thought of Finn, of his laughter, his dreams, his last terrified scream. Yes, she said. I can do this. Good. Draven squeezed her hand once, then released it. Because we ride at sunset. And after that, his smile was sharp and wild and absolutely fearless. All bets are off. They rode through the night like wolves fleeing winter. Lillian clung to her horse, a gray mare named Storm who seemed entirely too calm given the breakneck pace, and tried not to think about how exposed they were. How vulnerable. The forest pressed in on both sides of the narrow road, thick with shadows that could hide anything, assassins, rogues, Garrett's wolves waiting to strike. 5 days. The words beat in time with Storm's hooves against packed earth. 5 days to reach the Covenant grounds. For nights camping in hostile territory. 3 days until I have to face the monster who killed my brother. Her hands tightened on the reins. Ahead, Draven rode like he'd been born in the saddle, all lethal grace and controlled power, his dark hair streaming behind him, every line of his body alert for danger. He changed into travel leathers that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less, black and supple and fitted enough to show the play of muscle beneath. Lillian forced her eyes away. Don't, she told herself firmly. He's an Alpha King. You're a witness. A tool. A means to an end. But then she remembered the way he'd touched her face in the war room. The raw honesty in his voice when he'd said you saw a man who could listen. The way he'd called her his. Stop. You're thinking too loud. Lillian startled, nearly dropping her reins. Kara had maneuvered her horse alongside Storm, her scarred face unreadable in the moonlight. I'm not. You are. Been watching you chew on your thoughts for the last hour. The warrior's lips quirked. Let me guess. Wondering why His Majesty's risking potential war over one healer? Trying to figure out his angle? His endgame? Something like that, Lillian admitted. Kara was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on Draven's silhouette ahead. I've served him for 60 years, she said finally. Watched him break rebellions, crush enemies, rule with a fist wrapped in claws. He's brutal when he needs to be, merciless to threats. She paused. But he's also the male who personally funded every orphanage in the Northern Territories after the plague, who abolished the Omega servant trade despite opposition from half the High Council, who takes the night watch himself when we're on dangerous roads because he refuses to ask his warriors to face risks he won't. She turned to look at Lillian directly. He's not using you. That's not his style. When Draven protects someone, it's because he's decided they're worth protecting. And once he decides, a strange smile crossed her face. Nothing short of death will change his mind. That's terrifying, Lillian whispered. Isn't it? Kara's grin widened. But also kind of magnificent. Just try not to break his heart, yeah? We like him functional. Before Lillian could process that absolutely ridiculous statement, break his heart? The Alpha King doesn't have a heart to break. Kara had spurred her horse forward, leaving Lillian alone with her spiraling thoughts. They made camp 2 hours before dawn. Not proper camp, more like a defensive position in a clearing ringed by ancient oaks, with sentries posted at every cardinal point and warriors taking shifts in tower rotations. Lillian helped where she could, which mostly meant staying out of the way while trained soldiers moved with practiced efficiency. A fire sprang to life in the clearing center, small, controlled, just enough for warmth and basic cooking. Someone produced travel rations that tasted like leather and regret. Lillian ate mechanically, too tired to care. You should sleep. She looked up to find Draven settling onto the log beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. He'd removed his leather jacket, and the thin shirt beneath clung to his frame in ways that absolutely should not be distracting. I'm fine, Lillian lied. You're exhausted. You've barely slept since arriving at court, and we have 3 more days of hard travel ahead. His gold eyes studied her face in the firelight. I need you sharp when we reach the grounds. Alert. Ready to face the council without collapsing from exhaustion. I said I'm fine. And I said you're exhausted. He shifted closer, and suddenly his shoulder was pressed against hers, solid, warm, anchoring. Let me tell you a secret, little healer. One of the hardest lessons an alpha learns is when to push and when to rest. You've been running on fury and grief for 6 months. That's not sustainable. It's kept me alive. Barely. His voice was soft, almost gentle. And now you don't have to run anymore. You have an army at your back, a king's protection, and a relatively defensible position for the next few hours. So sleep. That's not a request. Lillian wanted to argue. Wanted to snap that she didn't take orders from anyone, not even him. But gods, she was tired. So tired. Her eyes drifted toward the bedrolls spread around the clearing, simple affairs, barely padding between body and ground. No privacy. Surrounded by warriors she barely knew. I can't, she admitted quietly. Every time I close my eyes, I see, she stopped, jaw tightening. Fire, Draven finished. Screaming. Your brother. She didn't ask how he knew. Alphas could scent trauma the way others scented perfume. Nightmares are a warrior's companion, he said after a moment. I've had the same dream for 200 years. The night I killed my father. The look in his eyes when he realized his son, his heir, was going to tear out his throat. His jaw flexed. He was a tyrant. A monster who broke his pack through fear and cruelty. Killing him was necessary. Right. The only way to save countless lives. Draven's voice dropped. But I still see his face. Still hear his last words, you'll become me, boy. Give it time. Lillian's breath caught. Have you become him? He considered the question seriously. Some days I'm not sure. I've done terrible things in the name of stability. Killed without hesitation when threats arose. Ruled with the same iron fist I once despised. He turned to face her, and the vulnerability in his eyes nearly broke her. But then someone like you stumbles into my court and tells me to shut up, and I realize I'm still capable of surprise. Of feeling something other than duty and dominance. His hand found hers, fingers tingling. So maybe I haven't become him. Not yet. You won't, Lillian said with absolute certainty. Because he never would have doubted himself. Never would have questioned whether his cruelty was justified. How do you know? Because monsters don't fund orphanages. They don't risk war to protect witnesses. They don't, she swallowed hard. They don't hold the hand of a broken healer and admit they have nightmares too. Something shifted in Draven's expression. His thumb traced circles on her palm, slow, rhythmic, absurdly soothing. Sleep, he murmured. I'll keep watch. If nightmares come, I'll wake you. That's not. Please. The word sounded foreign in his mouth, like he didn't use it often. Let me do this one small thing, Lillian. Let me protect you from at least one enemy, even if it's just your own exhausted mind. The firelight played across his face, softening the harsh lines, making him look younger. Almost vulnerable. Lillian made a decision that was probably stupid, but felt desperately necessary. She leaned against his shoulder. Let her head rest in the hollow where his neck met his collarbone. Felt him go very still, surprised, maybe, or uncertain, before his arm came around her, holding her against his warmth. Just for a few minutes, she mumbled. Of course. His voice rumbled through his chest. Just a few minutes. She was asleep before she finished exhaling. Lillian woke to golden sunlight and the smell of coffee. No, not coffee. Something darker, richer. She cracked one eye open and found herself still tucked against Draven's side, his arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders, his own head tilted back against the log with his eyes closed. Had he slept at all? He hasn't moved in 5 hours, Kara said softly from nearby. The warrior crouched by the fire, stirring something in a battered pot. been sitting there like a statue, keeping watch while you drooled on his very expensive shirt. I did not. Lillian caught the teasing glint in Kara's eyes and stopped. How long have I been asleep? 5 hours. Maybe 6. His Majesty refused to let anyone wake you, said you needed rest more than we needed to make time. She ladled dark liquid into a tin cup and held it out. Here. It's not coffee, but it'll wake you up. Fair warning. Tastes like dirt and determination. Lillian carefully extracted herself from Draven's embrace, trying not to notice how his arm tightened instinctively before releasing her, how his eyes flickered open to track her movement with predatory awareness. Sorry, she muttered, accepting the cup. I didn't mean to. You needed sleep. His voice was rough, gravelly. I provided a marginally comfortable surface. Mutual benefit. Your arm's probably dead. I've endured worse. He rolled his shoulder, and she definitely didn't watch the play of muscle beneath his shirt. Definitely not. We'll break camp in 20 minutes. The next leg is through Thornwood territory, technically neutral, but they have a non-aggression treaty with Silverbrook. We'll need to move fast and quiet. Lillian sipped the not coffee. It did indeed taste like dirt. And determination. And possibly old boots. Will Garrett have allies waiting? She asked. Probably. Draven stood, stretching in ways that should not be that distracting. But Thornwood's alpha is smart. She won't risk open conflict with me over someone else's vendetta. At worst, she'll look the other way if Garrett's wolves coincidentally cross paths with us. At worst. Lillian raised an eyebrow. At best, she'll offer us hospitality and force Garrett to wait until we leave her territory. He paused. Alpha Evelyn and I have history. The way he said history made something in Lillian's chest tighten uncomfortably. Jealousy, her wolf supplied helpfully. That's jealousy, you idiot. Shut up, Lillian told her wolf. We don't get jealous of alpha kings and their past lovers. Why not? He held us all night. He called us his. He. Nothing romantic, Draven added, apparently reading something in her expression. We fought together in the Northern Wars. She's a brilliant tactician and a loyal ally. Also mated with 3 bonds and extremely happy about it, so definitely no romantic history. I wasn't, Lillian started. You were. His smile was infuriatingly smug. Your heartbeat accelerated, your scent shifted, and you're gripping that cup like you want to throw it at my head. Classic signs of caffeine deprivation, Lillian interrupted firmly. I'm grumpy without proper coffee. Of course. My mistake. But his eyes danced with amusement. Around them, warriors broke camp with practiced efficiency, rolling bedrolls, dousing fires, checking weapons. Lillian drained the dirt coffee and handed the cup back to Kara, who winked in a way that suggested she'd heard every word of that mortifying exchange. I'm going to die of embarrassment before Garrett gets a chance to kill me, Lillian thought. Then Draven's hand found the small of her back, just a touch, barely pressure, and guided her toward where Storm waited, already saddled. Stay close today, he said quietly. Thornwood territory is complicated. And I'd rather not test whether your voice binding works on Alpha Evelyn if things go sideways. You think it would? I think you're powerful in ways we haven't fully explored yet. And I think every alpha we encounter is going to react with either fear or fascination. His gold eyes held hers. My job is making sure fascination doesn't become obsession. Or threat. Before she could respond, he'd moved away. Checking horses, conferring with his commanders, transforming back into the Alpha King who ruled by dominance and strategy. But Lillian's back still tingled where he'd touched her. And she was beginning to suspect this journey was going to be dangerous in more ways than one. Thornwood territory announced itself with a shift in the forest. The trees grew taller here, older, their trunks thick as houses and their canopy so dense it blocked out the midday sun. Moss carpeted everything, rocks, fallen logs, even the road itself, creating an eerie, muffled silence broken only by horse hooves and careful breathing. I don't like this, Kara muttered from Lillian's left. Too quiet. Too perfect for an ambush. Agreed. Draven had dropped back to ride alongside them, his hand resting casually on his sword hilt. But we're being watched by Thornwood scouts. Have been since we crossed the border. If Garrett's wolves were lying in wait, Evelyn would have warned them off. She doesn't allow unauthorized violence in her territory. Unless someone made it worth her while, another warrior, Noah, Lillian thought his name was, said grimly. Evelyn can't be bought. Draven's voice was certain. She can be reasoned with, negotiated with, even intimidated if you're stupid enough to try. But bought? Never. As if summoned by her name, wolves materialized from the forest. 10 of them. 15. 20. All in fighting leathers, all armed, forming a loose cordon that definitely was not an honor guard. And at their head, riding a white stallion that looked like it had stepped out of a fairy tale. Alpha Evelyn of Thornwood. She was stunning in a way that had nothing to do with conventional beauty, sharp features, iron gray hair cropped short, eyes the pale green of new leaves, a presence that promised both violence and wisdom in equal measure. She wore her authority like a second skin, comfortable, absolute, earned through blood and brilliance. When those pale eyes landed on Draven, her expression shifted into something almost fond. Well, well. Her voice carried easily through the silent forest. The Alpha King himself, riding through my territory like he owns it. Should I be flattered or insulted, Draven? Flattered, preferably. He guided his horse forward with easy confidence. Though I'll settle for not murdered. Hello, Evelyn. You're looking ferociously competent as always. And you're looking exhausted and hunted. Her gaze swept over the assembled warriors, paused on Lillian. This is the girl everyone's talking about? The voice binder. This is Lillian Ashwood, Draven corrected. And yes, she's the first voice binder in 2 centuries. She's also a council witness, under my protection, and absolutely not available for testing, studying, or whatever other ideas are percolating in that tactical mind of yours. Evelyn's smile was sharp. I wasn't going to suggest anything so crude. She guided her stallion closer, circling Lillian's mare like a shark assessing prey. How does it work? The silencing. I don't, Lillian started. She doesn't know yet, Draven interrupted. We're still figuring it out. Which is why we need to reach the Covenant grounds alive, intact, and in 3 days. Evelyn's eyes glittered with understanding. Garrett moved the meeting up. I heard. Also heard he's been calling in favors, making alliances, building a case that you're harboring a dangerous magical threat instead of a legitimate witness. And which do you believe? I believe, Evelyn said slowly, that Garrett is a cowardly little shit who murdered civilians and got caught. I also believe that a voice binder in the wrong hands could be catastrophic. She looked directly at Lillian. The question is, are you in the wrong hands, girl? Lillian lifted her chin. I'm in my own hands. His Majesty is just keeping me alive long enough to tell the truth. Bold. Evelyn's smile widened. I like her, Draven. She's got spine. She's also exhausted and traumatized and really doesn't need alpha posturing right now, Draven said, an edge creeping into his voice. Can we skip to the part where you either offer safe passage or try to detain us? I'd like to know which before sunset. Evelyn laughed, rich and genuine. Always so impatient. Very well. Safe passage through Thornwood with one condition. Name it. My son rides with you to the Covenant grounds. She gestured, and a young male emerged from the assembled wolves, maybe 25, with Evelyn's sharp features and hair the color of autumn leaves. Liam. He's training for council politics, and I want him to see how this plays out. Consider it an educational opportunity. Draven's joy tightened. And if I refuse? Then you take the long route around Thornwood. Adds 2 days to your journey. Which means you arrive with no time to prepare, no time to rest, and Garrett gets exactly what he wants, you scrambling. Evelyn's expression hardened. I'm offering you hospitality, Draven. A night in my hold with real beds, hot food, and defensive positions. But I want something in return. That's how alliances work. Silence stretched. Then Draven exhaled slowly. Fine. Liam rides with us. But if anything happens to him, you'll unleash hell and fury and probably declare war. Yes, yes. I'm familiar with your threats. Evelyn smirked. Don't worry. My son can handle himself. Can't you, Liam? Yes, mother. The young alpha's voice was steady, respectful. His eyes found Lillian's and held curious, assessing, but not hostile. I'd be honored to ride with the legendary voicebinder. I'm not legendary, Lillian muttered. I'm just extraordinary, Draven cut in. His tone brooked no argument. She's extraordinary. And anyone who treats her as less will answer to me. The possessiveness in his voice made heat flood Lillian's cheeks. Evelyn noticed, of course she did, and her smile turned knowing. Well then, she said. Shall we adjourn to the hold? I have wine, food, and extremely comfortable guest chambers. And I'm dying to hear all about how a healer from a burned village became the most talked about wolf in the Northern Territories. She wheeled her stallion around, already moving. Try to keep up, Draven, she called over her shoulder. And do try not to look at your witness, like you want to devour her. It's terribly transparent. Kara burst out laughing. Draven swore under his breath. And Lillian, caught between mortification and something dangerously close to hope, followed them deeper into Thornwood. The hold was magnificent. Built into and around the ancient trees, it was more vertical than horizontal, wooden platforms connected by rope bridges and spiral staircases, buildings that clung to massive trunks like elaborate treehouses, all of it designed to blend seamlessly with the forest. It was beautiful. It was also defensible as hell. Lillian could see the tactical advantages even with her limited military knowledge. High ground. Multiple levels. Countless escape routes. Anyone attacking this place would have to fight uphill in unfamiliar terrain against an enemy who knew every branch and shadow. No wonder Thornwood had remained independent for so long. Impressive, isn't it? Liam had maneuvered his horse beside Storm, his tone friendly. Mother spent 50 years building this. Said if we were going to live in the forest, we should live with it, not against it. It's incredible, Lillian admitted. Wait until you see the guest quarters. Best beds in the Northern Territories. He paused. I'm sorry, by the way. About Ashbrook. About what Garrett did. My mother wanted to intervene, but Silverbrook had already filed the incident as handled before we even heard about it. Lillian's hands tightened on the reins. It's not your fault. Maybe not. But it's not yours either. His green eyes, so like his mother's, held genuine sympathy. Survivors carry guilt like a second skin. I've seen it in warriors, in refugees. You'll drive yourself mad trying to figure out what you could have done differently. You sound like you speak from experience. I lost my father in the Northern Wars. Watched him die protecting our border. Liam's voice went quiet. Spent years wondering if I could have saved him. If I'd been faster, stronger, more something. Eventually realized the only thing I could have changed was my own destruction. And that wouldn't have brought him back. The words settled into Lillian's chest, heavy and true. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For saying that. For not, she swallowed hard. For not telling me it'll get easier. Or that time heals all wounds. Or any of the other platitudes people offer when they don't know what else to say. Liam smiled, warm and genuine. I hate platitudes. They're well-meaning lies. He glanced ahead to where Draven rode beside his mother. Fair warning, His Majesty has been glaring at me for the last 5 minutes. I think he's deciding whether I'm a threat. A threat to what? To you, obviously. Liam's smile turned mischievous. He's ridiculously transparent about his interest. Has been since the moment Mother mentioned riding with you. I half expected him to bare his teeth and growl, mine. He did not. He did. Internally. I could see it in his eyes. Liam chuckled. Alpha Kings aren't used to wanting things they can't command into existence. You've got him completely off balance. It's hilarious. Lillian's face burned. There's nothing between us. He's protecting me because I'm a witness. That's all. If you say so. But Liam's expression suggested he didn't believe a word of it. They reached the central platform, a massive circular space built around 3 ancient trees, large enough for 50 people to gather comfortably. Servants materialized to take horses, to offer refreshments, to usher the travel-worn warriors toward bathing facilities. Evelyn stood at the platform's edge, surveying her domain with satisfaction. "Welcome to Thornwood Hold," she announced. "Rooms have been prepared. Dinner at sunset. Draven, you and I need to discuss council politics. Kara, my second, will brief you on security arrangements. And Lillian." She turned, those pale eyes pinning Lillian in place. "You and I should talk. Privately." Draven materialized at Lillian's side so fast it should have been impossible. About? About voice binding. About what it means for pack dynamics. About how to present her to the council without getting her killed. Evelyn's expression softened fractionally. "Relax, Draven. I'm not going to hurt your precious witness. I'm going to help prepare her. Unless you think she's ready to face 12 of the most powerful, territorial, paranoid alphas in existence without guidance." Draven's jaw worked. 1 hour, he said finally. "Then she eats, rests, and stays with my warriors." Agreed. Agreed. Evelyn gestured toward a suspended walkway. "Come, Lillian. Let's see if we can't turn you from victim into weapon." Lillian followed, feeling Draven's gold eyes tracking her every step, and wondered with growing trepidation exactly what she was walking into. Evelyn's private chambers occupied the highest platform in Thornwood Hold, a space that felt more like a command center than living quarters. Maps covered every wall, marked with territories and trade routes and what looked like military deployments. A massive desk dominated one corner, buried under scrolls and ledgers. Windows wrapped 3 sides of the room, offering a panoramic view of the forest that stretched to the horizon. It was the office of someone who saw everything, who controlled everything. "Sit." Evelyn gestured to a pair of chairs near the window, already pouring amber liquid into crystal glasses. "You'll want the whiskey for this conversation. Trust me." Lillian sat, accepting the glass with hands that only trembled slightly. "What conversation, exactly?" "The one where I tell you truths no one else will." Evelyn settled into the opposite chair with predatory grace. "Starting with this, the council doesn't want justice for Ashbrook. They want you gone." The words hit like a physical blow. "What?" "Think about it." Evelyn leaned forward, pale eyes intense. "You're a voice binder. The first in 2 centuries. You can silence alphas, the beings whose entire authority rests on dominance displays, on the ability to command through voice and presence. You're a walking threat to the established power structure. But I'm also proof of Garrett's crimes, which makes you useful to Draven. Not to them." Evelyn took a long sip of whiskey. "Half the council profits from Silverbrook's territory expansions. They look the other way when Garrett cleanses neutral zones because it opens up land for development, for new pack settlements. Your testimony threatens their income streams." Lillian's stomach turned. "So they'll what? Dismiss my evidence? Call me a liar? Worse. They'll argue you're using voice binding to manipulate testimony, that your magic makes you inherently untrustworthy." Evelyn's expression was grim. "And then they'll suggest, very reasonably, very legally, that you should be placed under protective custody for study. Indefinitely." That's Lillian's hands clenched around her glass. "That's imprisonment. They can't. They can. They will. Unless Draven stops them." Evelyn paused. "Which he will try to do, at great political cost. But here's what you need to understand about the Alpha King, girl. He's powerful, but not omnipotent. He rules by consent of the council. If they unite against him, if they decide you're too dangerous to live. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. So I'm dead either way, Lillian said flatly. Garrett kills me, or the council imprisons me, or I disappear in some tragic accident because I'm inconvenient. Not necessarily. Evelyn's smile was sharp. There's a third option. One Draven's too noble to suggest, but I'm not. Which is, become indispensable. Prove your value so thoroughly that the council can't afford to eliminate you. She set her glass down with careful precision. Voice binding isn't just silencing, Lillian. The old texts speak of compulsion, of command, of the ability to make alphas obey. Not through force, but through undeniable authority. Ice flooded Lillian's veins. I don't know how. Then learn. Fast. Evelyn stood, crossing to her desk and retrieving a leather-bound journal. This belonged to the last known voice binder. Mara Ashwood, your ancestor, I'm guessing, based on the name. She died 200 years ago, but not before documenting her abilities. She held out the journal. Lillian took it with shaking hands. The leather was cracked with age, the pages yellowed and brittle. But the writing inside was clear, precise, written in a feminine hand that looked almost urgent. To whoever finds this, do not fear what you are. Fear what others will make of you if you remain ignorant. Where did you get this? Lillian whispered. Bought it from a collector 30 years ago. I have an interest in magical lineages. In lost arts. Evelyn's expression turned calculating. I've been waiting for someone like you. A voice binder who could tip the balance of power. Change the game. Why? Lillian looked up sharply. Why help me? What do you get out of this? Smart question. Evelyn smiled with approval. I get an ally. Someone who can keep the more aggressive alphas in check, who can mediate disputes without bloodshed, who can help maintain the fragile peace we've built. She paused. And selfishly? I get the satisfaction of watching Garrett squirm when he realizes he can't bully or intimidate his way out of consequences. It was honest, at least. Calculating, but honest. The journal contains exercises, Evelyn continued. Ways to strengthen your gift. To extend your reach, to hold commands longer, she hesitated. To bind alphas to your will, if necessary. Mara called it the last resort. A compulsion so strong that the target becomes incapable of disobeying. Horror crawled up Lillian's spine. That's slavery. That's survival. Evelyn's voice was hard. If Garrett attacks you at the Covenant grounds, and he will try, you'll need every advantage. Including the ability to stop him permanently. By enslaving him? By surviving. Evelyn gripped Lillian's shoulders. Listen to me. I've seen what happens to soft-hearted wolves in council politics. They get eaten alive. If you go into those chambers thinking mercy and justice will save you, you'll end up dead or imprisoned within hours. She released Lillian, stepping back. But if you go in knowing your power, knowing your worth, ready to demonstrate exactly what a voice binder can do, then maybe you'll walk out alive. And maybe you'll even bring Garrett down with you. Lillian stared at the journal in her hands. At her ancestors' words, fear what others will make of you if you remain ignorant. How long do I have? She asked quietly. To learn this. To master it. 2 days. Maybe 3 if we're lucky. Evelyn's expression softened fractionally. It's not enough time. Not nearly enough. But it's what we have. Then we'd better not waste it. Dinner was a tense, formal affair. The dining hall, another massive platform suspended between trees, accommodated 50 easily. Long tables groaned under platters of roasted meat, fresh bread, winter vegetables, and enough wine to drown a small army. Thornwood warriors mixed with bloodstone soldiers, the atmosphere carefully cordial despite underlying tensions. Lillian sat between Draven and Kara, hyper-aware of every eye tracking her movement. You're quiet, Draven murmured, his voice pitched for her ears alone. What did Evelyn say? The truth. Lillian pushed food around her plate. That the council wants me gone. that I'm a threat to their power structure, that I need to become indispensable or disappear. Draven's hand found hers under the table, warm, solid, anchoring. I won't let them take you, he said softly, fiercely. I don't care what political games they play. You're under my protection, and that means something. Does it? Lillian turned to face him. If the council unites against you, if they decide I'm too dangerous, can you really stop them? All of them. His jaw tightened. I can try. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. His gold eyes held hers, burning with something desperate and determined. I won't give you false promises, Lillian. The council is powerful, entrenched. They've been playing these games for centuries, and he exhaled roughly. I'm good at war, at dominance, at breaking things that need breaking. But politics? Manipulation? That's not my strength. Then what is? Loyalty. The word came out like a vow. Once I claim something as mine, a territory, a warrior, he stopped, seemed to reconsider. Once I decide something matters, I don't let go. Not for politics. Not for convenience. Not even for survival. That's incredibly stupid, Lillian whispered. I know. His smile was crooked, almost vulnerable. But it's all I am. All I know how to be. Their eyes held. Around them, conversation flowed, warriors sharing stories, alphas negotiating subtle alliances, the careful dance of pack politics. But in that moment, Lillian felt like they were alone. Like the world had narrowed to gold eyes and callous fingers still wrapped around hers. Evelyn gave me something, she said quietly. A journal. From the last voice binder. My ancestor, apparently. Draven went very still. What kind of journal? Instructions. Exercises. Ways to strengthen my gift. She swallowed hard. Ways to compel obedience if necessary. No. The word was flat. Final. Absolutely not. Draven. I said no. His hand tightened on hers. Voice binding for silence, for communication, for forcing people to listen? That I can accept. But compulsion? Enslavement? His voice dropped. That's what my father did. Breaking wolves until they had no choice but to obey. I won't watch you become that. Even if it keeps me alive? Especially then. He turned fully to face her, both hands cupping her face now, heedless of watching eyes. I've lived 300 years, Lillian. I've seen what happens when power corrupts. When fear turns people into monsters. And I would rather die defending you than watch you sacrifice your soul for survival. Her voice cracked. That's the most ridiculous, noble, frustrating thing anyone's ever said to me. I'm an Alpha King. Ridiculous and noble comes with the territory. His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. Promise me. Promise you won't use compulsion unless there's absolutely no other choice. Unless it's literally life or death. Lillian wanted to argue. Wanted to point out that every moment between now and the council meeting was potentially life or death. But the raw pleading in his eyes stopped her. I promise, she whispered. Last resort only. Thank you. He pressed his forehead against hers, an intimate gesture that made heat flood her cheeks. I can't lose you to darkness, little healer. I've seen enough wolves destroyed by power. I won't watch it happen to you. You barely know me. I know enough. His breath ghosted across her lips. I know you told an Alpha King to shut up instead of submitting. I know you burned down an outpost because justice mattered more than survival. I know you're brave and broken and absolutely terrified, but facing it anyway. His voice dropped to something rough and honest. And I know that for the first time in centuries, I feel human instead of just powerful. Like I matter for something beyond my crown and my territory. His eyes searched hers. So yes, I barely know you. But what I do know, it's enough to make me want to tear apart anyone who tries to hurt you. Lillian's heart hammered. Draven. A throat cleared. Loudly. They sprang apart to find Evelyn watching them with undisguised amusement. Forgive the interruption, she said, tone suggesting she wasn't sorry at all. but the entertainment is about to begin. I thought you might appreciate advance warning. Entertainment. Draven's voice was carefully neutral, but color stained his cheeks. Liam challenged some of your warriors to sparring demonstrations. Apparently, there's debate about whether bloodstone or thornwood produces superior fighters. Evelyn's smile was wicked. I suggested they settle it publicly, with witnesses and bets. Mother, you're terrible, Liam called from across the hall, grinning. I'm strategic. She turned back to Draven and Lillian. Also, it gives everyone something to focus on besides the increasingly obvious tension between you two. You're welcome. She swept away before either could respond. Kara was trying and failing not to laugh. She's not wrong. You two have all the subtlety of mating wolves. It's embarrassing to watch. We're not, Lillian started. We're just, Draven said simultaneously. They stopped, looked at each other. This is complicated, Lillian finished weakly. Extremely, Draven agreed. Also inevitable, Kara added helpfully. But sure, keep pretending it's not happening. That's working great for you. She stood, heading toward where warriors were clearing space for demonstrations, leaving Lillian and Draven alone in a suddenly too quiet corner of the dining hall. She's insufferable, Draven muttered. She's right, Lillian countered. About? This. Lillian gestured between them. Whatever this is. It's complicated. It's probably stupid. And it's definitely going to make everything harder. Then we don't acknowledge it. His voice was firm. We focus on getting you to the council alive. On bringing Garrett to justice. On ignoring the fact that you held my hand through dinner and looked at me like I'm the most important thing in your kingdom? Lillian's laugh was shaky. That's your plan. It's a terrible plan, Draven admitted. His hand found hers again, fingers tangling like they had their own gravity. But it's the only way I know to keep you safe. Because if the council sees weakness, if they realize you're not just a witness, but someone He stopped abruptly. Someone you what? Lillian prompted, even though her heart was racing. Draven's eyes met hers, gold and burning and terrifyingly honest. Someone I would burn kingdoms for, he said softly. And that? That makes you the most dangerous weakness I've ever had. The words settled between them like prophecy. Before Lillian could respond, before she could process what he'd just admitted, shouts erupted from the sparring area. Not playful. Not excited. Alarmed. Draven was moving before conscious thought, dragging Lillian with him toward the commotion. Warriors parted, revealing Liam on his knees, hands pressed his temples, face twisted in agony. And standing over him, eyes glowing with malicious triumph. A wolf Lillian didn't recognize. Tall, lean, with silver streaking his dark hair and a smile that promised cruelty. Forgive the intrusion, the stranger said, his voice carrying easily through sudden silence. But I bring a message from Alpha Garrett. He pulled a blade from his belt. Not silver. Something darker. Something that made Lillian's wolf whimper and press low. He says the voice binder has 3 choices. The stranger's smile widened. Come to Silverbrook willingly for judgment. Kill herself before the council meeting. He pressed the blade against Liam's throat, drawing a thin line of blood. Or watch everyone she cares about die. Slowly. Starting with the heir of Thornwood. Evelyn snarled, a sound of pure maternal rage. Draven's hand shot out, stopping her. Wait. Wait. Evelyn's eyes flashed gold. He's threatening my son. He's baiting us. Creating an incident. Draven's voice was steel. If you attack, it's war. If I attack, it's war. And war is exactly what Garrett wants, chaos before the council meeting, proof that we're unstable, violent, unfit to bring accusations. The stranger laughed. Smart king. But what will you do? Stand there while I bleed this pup? Or prove you're exactly as violent as Garrett claims? Lillian felt power stirring in her chest. Cold. Vast. Ancient. Her ancestors' words echoed, the last resort. A compulsion so strong the target becomes incapable of disobeying. Lillian, no, Draven said quietly, somehow knowing exactly what she was considering. Don't. He has a knife to Liam's throat, Lillian interrupted. Her voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. That's life or death. That's last resort, Draven finished. His hand found hers, squeezed once. Are you sure? Was she? This would change everything. Cross a line she couldn't uncross. Turn her from witness into weapon. But Liam was Evelyn's son. A young alpha who'd shown her nothing but kindness. And that blade was pressed against his throat, ready to kill him for no reason except sending a message. Except terrifying her into submission. No, Lillian thought. No more submission. No more running. She stepped forward, pulling free of Draven's grip. Let him go, she said clearly. Last chance. The stranger's smile was condescending. Or what, little voice binder? You'll silence me? Make me shut up. He pressed the blade harder, and Liam gasped. I'm not here to talk. I'm here to kneel. The word cracked through the air like lightning. Power flooded out of Lillian in a wave, cold and absolute and undeniable. It slammed into the stranger like a physical blow, and his eyes went wide. Terrified. His body moved without permission, without choice, legs folding until he crashed to his knees. The blade clattered from nerveless fingers. Release him, Lillian commanded. The stranger's hands unclenched from Liam's shirt. The young alpha scrambled away, gasping, his mother catching him in fierce arms. Lillian stepped closer to the kneeling assassin, this power thrumming through her veins like wildfire. Who sent you? She asked. Gar, the stranger's jaw worked, fighting the compulsion. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Can't, won't. Answer me. The words came with force behind them, with will and command and absolute authority. Garrett. The name burst from the stranger's lips like confession. Alpha Garrett. Paid me 10,000, said kill the voice binder or the air, didn't matter which, create chaos, make it look. Enough. Lillian's hands shook. This was too much. Too powerful. She could feel the stranger's will bending, breaking, could sense how easy it would be to unmake him entirely. Sleep. The assassin's eyes rolled back. He collapsed, unconscious, before he hit the platform. Silence fell. Every eye in the hall stared at Lillian like she'd sprouted wings or burst into flame. She felt Draven's presence at her back, solid, warm, anchoring. Well, Evelyn said into the stunned quiet. Her voice shook slightly. That was educational. Terrifying, another alpha muttered. Necessary, Draven corrected sharply. He moved to stand beside Lillian, his hand finding hers. She saved Liam's life. Used her gift exactly as it was meant to be used, to stop violence, to protect innocence, to force truth from those who would hide behind lies. His gaze swept the assembled wolves, daring any to challenge him. This is what a voice binder does. This is what they've always done. And anyone who calls her a threat after witnessing this? After seeing her choose mercy over murder? His voice dropped to something cold and lethal. They'll answer to me. Lillian looked at the unconscious assassin. At Liam being fussed over by his mother. At the warriors watching her with expressions ranging from awe to fear to respect. At Draven's hand wrapped around hers, steady and certain. I crossed the line, she whispered. I used compulsion. You saved a life. Draven turned her to face him. You stopped a threat. You forced a confession that proves Garrett's plotting murder. His gold eyes burned into hers. You did exactly what needed doing, Lillian. Nothing more. But now they know. Her voice cracked. They know what I can do. What I'm capable of. They'll never see me as just a witness again. They'll see. A force to be reckoned with. He cupped her face. Good. Let them fear you. Let them understand that attacking you, threatening you, trying to silence you, that comes with consequences. He pressed his forehead to hers, and Lillian felt the last of her composure crumbling. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of what I can do. Of what I might become. I know." His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "But you're not alone in this. Not anymore. Whatever you become, whatever power grows in you." His voice roughened with emotion. "I'll be right here, reminding you who you are, who you've always been." He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "A healer who refuses to let monsters win. That's my Lillian. That's who I'll fight for. Who I'll—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "Who I'll stand beside," he finished. "Always." Lillian's breath caught, because the words he'd stopped himself from saying hung in the air anyway, loud as thunder. "Who I'll love." And from the look in his eyes, raw and desperate and absolutely terrified, he knew she'd heard them. "Draven," she started. "We should secure the prisoner," he interrupted, stepping back, professional mask sliding into place. "Question him properly. Send word to the council about Garrett's attempted assassination." He turned to Evelyn. "Can you hold him until—" "Already done." Evelyn gestured, and warriors moved to secure the unconscious assassin. "And I'll testify to what happened here. Multiple witnesses. Irrefutable proof of Garrett's conspiracy." Her pale eyes found Lillian's. "You just became the most valuable asset in pack politics, girl. And the most hunted." A strange smile crossed her face. "Welcome to the game. Try not to die." Then she swept away, barking orders, organizing damage control. Leaving Lillian standing in a hall full of staring wolves, her hands still trembling with residual power, her heart hammering with truths she couldn't speak. Kara materialized at her elbow. "Come on. You need rest. And probably alcohol. Maybe both." "I'm fine." "You just mind-controlled an assassin and forced a confession in front of 50 witnesses. You're the opposite of fine." The warrior's scarred face softened. "Let me help. That's what packmates do. Packmates." The word settled into Lillian's chest, warm and strange. She let Kara guide her away from the hall, away from watching eyes and whispered conversations. Let herself be led to guest chambers that felt too large, too quiet after everything. "Sleep," Kara ordered. "I'll stand guard. No one gets through that door without going through me first." "Thank you," Lillian whispered. "Don't thank me. Thank His Majesty. He's the one who assigned me permanent protection detail." Kara's expression turned knowing. "He cares about you, Lillian. More than is probably wise for an Alpha King. More than he'll admit, even to himself." "I know," Lillian said softly. "Do you?" Kara studied her face. "Because from where I'm standing, you care right back. And that's either going to save you both or destroy you." She closed the door gently, leaving Lillian alone with her racing thoughts, her trembling hands, and the memory of Draven's almost confession echoing in her ears. "Who I'll love." 3 words he hadn't said. 3 words that changed everything. Lillian didn't sleep. She tried gods, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw the assassin's face. Felt the cold rush of power flooding through her veins. Heard her own voice speaking commands that bent will and shattered autonomy. "Kneel. Release him. Answer me. Sleep." For words that had turned her from victim into something else entirely. Something terrifying. By the time dawn painted the windows gold, she'd read half of Mara's journal by candlelight, her ancestors' words burning into her mind like brands. The gift is not the curse. The fear of it is. Every voice binder before me learned this too late. We are not weapons to be controlled or threats to be eliminated. We are bridges between dominance and cooperation, between alpha fury and pack harmony. But the world will only see the power, never the purpose. And they will destroy what they cannot control. If you are reading this, young one, then you have already felt the weight of impossible choice. The pressure to be less than you are, so others may feel safe. Resist this. The moment you diminish yourself for another's comfort is the moment you begin to die. But remember, power without compassion is tyranny. Strength without wisdom is destruction. Use your gift to protect, to heal, to force understanding where violence would reign. And if they come for you, when they come for you, do not go gentle into that darkness. Make them remember. Make them understand. You are voice binder. You are necessary. You are. The entry ended there, half finished, like Mara had been interrupted. Or killed. A knock at the door made Lillian jump. It's me, Draven's voice, rough with exhaustion. Can I come in? Lillian crossed to the door, opened it to find the Alpha King looking devastatingly disheveled, hair unbound and falling around his face, shirt unlaced, shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless hours matching her own. You look terrible, she said. You look worse. But his smile was gentle. May I? She stepped aside, letting him enter. He moved to the window, staring out at the forest awakening in morning light. The prisoner talked, he said without preamble. Extensively. Apparently compulsion has lasting effects. Once you've commanded someone, they become suggestible. More likely to tell truth. Harder to lie. Is that a good thing? For us? Yes. For diplomatic relations with wolves who value secrets. He exhaled roughly. It's complicated. The prisoner confirmed Garrett paid him 20,000, not 10, 20, to either kill you or create an incident that would discredit my protection. He also named 6 other conspirators, 3 of whom are council members. Lillian's stomach dropped. The council is helping him? Not all of them. But enough. Draven turned to face her, and the exhaustion in his eyes went deeper than physical. They want you silenced, Lillian. Not because they believe Garrett's innocence, but because your existence threatens their power structure. A voice binder who can compel truth, who can force accountability. Makes corruption impossible, Lillian finished. They're not protecting Garrett. They're protecting themselves. Exactly. He crossed to her, caught her hands in his. Which means the council meeting just became infinitely more dangerous. It's not just Garrett we're fighting anymore. It's a system. An entire political machine that benefits from keeping wolves like you powerless. His thumbs traced circles on her palms. I can still get you out, he said quietly. Fake your death. Smuggle you to the Western Territories, somewhere beyond council reach. Give you a new identity, protection, resources to start over. You'd let me go? I'd do anything to keep you alive. His voice was raw. Even lose you. Lillian's heart cracked. And Garrett? The justice Finn deserves? The other villages he'll destroy if no one stops him. I'll find another way. Gather more evidence. Build a case that doesn't require you to, he stopped, jaw tightening. That doesn't require you to sacrifice yourself. There is no other way. Lillian squeezed his hands. You know it. I know it. Without my testimony, without a voice binder to force truth, Garrett walks. And 6 months from now, another village burns. Another child dies. Another. Her voice broke. Draven pulled her into his arms, and she went willingly, pressing her face against his chest, breathing in pine and smoke and safety. I hate this, he muttered into her hair. I hate that you're brave enough to walk into that council chamber knowing they want you dead. I hate that I can't just burn it all down and keep you safe. I hate that you care, Lillian finished softly. That somewhere between shut up and now this became personal. It was always personal. His arms tightened. From the moment you looked at me like I was a man instead of a crown. From the second your voice died in my throat and I felt relieved instead of threatened. He pulled back just enough to cup her face. I've lived 300 years, Lillian. Loved exactly twice, both times badly, both times briefly, both times ending in loss. I learned early, caring makes you vulnerable. Attachment makes you weak. So I stopped. Became the Alpha King everyone needed, strong, merciless, alone. His gold eyes searched hers. And then you stumbled into my court with chains on your wrists and fire in your eyes, and suddenly I'm remembering what it feels like to want something beyond duty. To need someone beyond pact bonds. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. To love so fiercely it terrifies me. Lillian's breath stopped. Don't, she whispered. Don't say it. Don't make this harder. I love you. The words came out like confession, like vow, like breaking. I love your courage and your rage and the way you told an Alpha King to shut up because you were too exhausted to be afraid. I love that you saved Liam last night even though using compulsion scared you. I love. She kissed him, rose on her toes and pressed her mouth to his, swallowing the rest of his words, his confessions, his impossible declarations. He went rigid with surprise for half a heartbeat, then kissed her back with devastating intensity, one hand tangling in her hair, the other spanning her waist, pulling her flush against him. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and hungry and tasted like goodbye. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Draven's eyes were molten gold. Don't do that, he said roughly. Don't kiss me like you're saying farewell. Like you've already decided. I'm going to the council, Lillian interrupted. I'm testifying. I'm bringing Garrett down, and I'm proving that voice binders aren't threats. She traced his jaw with shaking fingers. And then, if we both survive, ask me again. Tell me you love me when we're not standing in the shadow of death. When there's actually a future to promise. Lillian. A sharp knock interrupted whatever desperate plea he'd been forming. Your Majesty. Kara's voice, tight with urgency. We have a problem. Multiple problems, actually. Draven closed his eyes briefly, visibly gathering himself, then called, Enter. Kara pushed through, her scarred face grim. Scouts just returned. Silverbrook forces, at least 50 wolves, are camped 2 miles south, blocking the main road to the Covenant grounds. Garrett. Draven asked sharply, commanding them personally. He's not even trying to hide it anymore. Kara's jaw tightened. There's more. We received word from the High Council. They're concerned about reports of voicebinder compulsion being used in Thornwood. They've requested, she practically spat the word, that Lillian be placed in protective custody pending investigation of her abilities. Absolutely not, Draven snarled. There's a formal warrant. Signed by 6 council members. Kara held out a scroll. If we arrive at the Covenant grounds without complying, they'll consider it defiance of council authority. Grounds for stripping your title. The words fell like executioner's blades. Lillian felt the walls closing in. So my choices are, surrender to custody, where they'll imprison or kill me. Or force Draven into conflict with the council, which destroys his authority and probably starts a war. Or we run, Kara said quietly. Break west. Disappear into unclaimed territories. Live as rogues. The Alpha King doesn't run. Draven's voice was ice. And I don't abandon wolves to corrupt systems just because fighting is inconvenient. Then what? We go through Garrett's blockade. He moved to the window, studying the forest with tactical precision. 50 wolves. Normally I'd call those manageable odds, but not with protecting Lillian as primary objective. His jaw worked. We need a distraction. Something to split their forces. I could draw them off, Kara offered. Take half our warriors, engage from the east while you slip through with Lillian and... No! Lillian's voice cut through the planning. Both wolves turned to stare at her. I'm done running. Done hiding. Done letting other people risk their lives while I cower. She crossed to Draven, met his eyes steadily. I'm a voice binder. I can silence 50 wolves if I need to. Can compel them to. No. Draven's response was immediate fierce. We talked about this. Compulsion is last resort. Using it on 50 wolves? That's not defense, Lillian. That's warfare. That's becoming exactly what they fear. Then what do you suggest? Lillian's frustration bled through. We can't fight them. Can't outrun them. Can't surrender to the council. What options are left? Silence stretched. Then Kara said quietly, "We could split up." "Absolutely not," Draven and Lillian said simultaneously. "Hear me out." The warrior held up her hands. "Garrett wants Lillian. The council wants Lillian. If she's with you, Draven, they have leverage. They can force your hand by threatening her. But if she travels separately, hidden, protected by volunteers willing to risk council displeasure, she becomes a target without proper defense," Draven finished coldly. "Unacceptable. Not if I go with her." Liam appeared in the doorway, his mother right behind him. "With Mom's permission, I'll escort Lillian via the old forest routes. Paths Garrett doesn't know. We travel light, fast, reach the Covenant grounds from the north while you engage his blockade from the south." "You're suggesting I use myself as bait," Draven said flatly. "I'm suggesting we use strategy." Evelyn stepped forward. "Garrett expects you to protect Lillian directly, to keep her close. We flip that expectation. Make him commit his forces to stopping you while she slips through his fingers. And if something goes wrong?" Draven's hands clenched. "If Garrett realizes the deception? If they ambush the smaller party? Then we fight," Liam said simply. "Mom taught me well. I can hold my own. Against 50 wolves? Against whoever tries to stop us." The young alpha's eyes were steady, determined. "Lillian saved my life last night. This is me returning the favor." Draven looked at Lillian, and she saw the war raging in his eyes, tactical sense battling protective instinct, duty warring with desperate need to keep her close. "It's the smart play," she said softly. "You know it is. Smart plays get people killed when variables shift." His voice was rough. "I can't. If something happens to you while we're separated, then you'll avenge me spectacularly and feel terrible forever." Lillian managed a shaky smile. "But if we don't split up, we both die. Or worse, they take me, imprison me, and you're forced to choose between your crown and a rescue attempt that could start civil war." She took his hands. "Let me do this. Let me be brave while you're terrifying. That's how we win." Draven stared at their joined hands for a long moment. When he looked up, his eyes were suspiciously bright. "If anything happens to you, it won't. I will burn down every territory between here and Silverbrook. I will tear apart the council. I will make Garrett's death last week's." His voice dropped to something cold and absolute. "And then I will find whoever allowed it to happen and ensure they understand exactly what it means to touch what's mine." It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like a promise. "I know," Lillian whispered. "I'm counting on it." He pulled her close, pressed his lips to her forehead, lingering, desperate. 3 days, he said against her skin. "We reach the Covenant grounds in 3 days. You stay alive until then, little healer." "That's an order from your king." "Not my king," Lillian corrected softly. "My partner." "My." She stopped, the word catching in her throat. Draven pulled back, eyes searching hers. "You're what?" "My stubborn, overprotective, impossible alpha she swallowed hard. "Who I'll see in 3 days. When this is over. When we can finish this conversation properly." His smile was sad and fierce and full of understanding. 3 days, he repeated. "Then you're mine. Officially. Irrevocably. Crown be damned." "Is that a proposal?" "It's a promise." He kissed her again, slower this time, thorough, like he was memorizing the taste of her. "Now go, before I change my mind and chain you to my side." They left within the hour. Lillian, Liam, and 3 of Evelyn's most trusted warriors, wolves who knew the forest paths, who could move silently through terrain that would slow larger forces. Minimal supplies. No horses, just wolf form travel through dense undergrowth that would hide their passage. Draven watched them disappear into the trees, his expression carved from stone. "She'll be safe," Evelyn said quietly. "Liam is capable. My warriors are loyal. And Lillian herself is far more dangerous than Garrett realizes. That's what worries me." Draven's voice was hollow. "Not that she's weak. That she's powerful enough to survive losing me. That if I fall. Don't. Evelyn gripped his shoulder. Don't think like that. You're the Alpha King. You've survived 3 centuries of war, politics, and assassination attempts. You'll survive this. Will I? He turned to face her, and the vulnerability in his eyes was shocking. I just let the woman I love walk into danger while I play decoy. Every instinct is screaming at me to chase after her, to trust her. Evelyn's voice was firm. That's what love is, Draven. Trusting someone to be capable, to fight their own battles, to not need saving, even when every part of you wants to provide it. She smiled sadly. Welcome to the terrifying reality of caring about an equal. It's hell. It's also the most human thing you've done in centuries. Draven was quiet for a long moment. Then, if she dies because of my strategy, then we'll mourn, and rage, and make Garrett pay. Evelyn's expression hardened. But she won't die, Draven. Because she's smart and strong and absolutely determined to make that bastard answer for Ashbrook. She stepped back, already moving toward her assembled warriors. Now come. We have a blockade to break and a coward to terrify. Let's remind Garrett exactly why attacking an Alpha King is suicidal. The forest swallowed Lillian whole. One moment she was looking back at Thornwood Hold, at Draven's silhouette against morning light, at the life she was leaving behind. The next, she'd shifted to wolf form and plunged into undergrowth, so thick it blocked out the sun. Liam ran point, a russet wolf with his mother's tactical brilliance. The 3 Thornwood warriors flanked them in protective formation. They moved fast, silent, following game trails and creek beds that wouldn't hold scent. 3 days, Lillian's wolf chanted. Just 3 days. Then we see him again. Then we finish this. But doubt crept in like poison. What if Garrett found them? What if the council arrested Draven for defiance? What if this separation became permanent, death or distance or duty splitting them before they'd even had a chance? Stop, she told herself. Focus. Survive. That's all that matters. They ran for hours, pausing only briefly for water, for scent checks, for Liam to navigate using landmarks only he recognized. The forest grew denser, older, filled with trees that had stood for millennia and shadows that held secrets. It was beautiful. It was also the perfect place for an ambush. Nothing's wrong, Lillian told herself. We're being paranoid. Garrett doesn't know these routes. Can't possibly. Liam stopped abruptly. The warriors froze, ears pricked, noses testing the wind. Then Lillian smelled it. Smoke. Not campfire. Not natural. This was acrid, chemical, carried on wind that shifted direction too deliberately to be coincidence. They'd been herded. Run, Liam's wolf seemed to say with every line of his body. Split up. Scatter. Survive. But before anyone could move, the forest erupted with wolves. 10, 20, 30 emerging from the undergrowth like nightmares, all bearing Silverbrook's scent, all moving with coordinated precision that spoke of military training. And at their head, shifting from massive copper wolf to human form with predatory grace, Alpha Garrett himself. Hello, voice binder, he said, smiling with all his teeth. I believe we have unfinished business. Lillian shifted to human form, flanked immediately by Liam and the Thornwood warriors. They were outnumbered 6-1, separated from Draven by miles of forest. Alone. How did you find us? She asked, stalling for time, for options, for anything. I didn't. Garrett's smile widened. But I know Evelyn. Know her tactics. Predicted she'd send her son via the old routes. So I simply positioned wolves along every route and waited for the inevitable. He stepped closer, and Lillian fought the urge to retreat. Did you really think I'd let you reach the council? Let you testify? Let you unmake everything I've built? His eyes glittered with malice. I've spent decades cultivating power, girl. Decades eliminating threats. You're just the latest problem requiring permanent solution. Touch her, Liam snarled, and you'll start a war with Thornwood. Will I? Garrett didn't even look at him. Or will your tragic deaths be blamed on rogues? On the dangerous journey? On the voicebinder's own unstable magic? He gestured, and his wolves closed in. The story writes itself, young heir and foreign which killed in the wilds. So sad. So regrettable. But these things happen to wolves who wander unprepared. Lillian felt power stirring in her chest, cold, fast, ready. Last resort, Draven's voice echoed. Promise me. But what choice did she have? 30 wolves against 5. No escape. No backup. No. Actually, a new voice drawled from the shadows. I think you'll find the story a bit more complicated than that. A figure emerged from the trees behind Garrett, tall, blonde, with scars crossing her face and murder in her hazel eyes. Kara. Followed by 20 bloodstone warriors, all armed, all ready, all grinning like violence was a gift. Garrett spun, confusion and fury warring on his face. How did you know about your ambush? Kara's smile was sharp as broken glass. Because His Majesty is smarter than you, Garrett. He knew you'd predict the split. Knew you'd set traps. So we became the trap within the trap. She stepped forward, casual as discussing weather. We've been following your wolves since they left Silverbrook. Tracking their movements. Documenting their positions. And now? Her eyes flashed gold. Now we have 30 witnesses who'll testify you attempted to murder a council witness on neutral territory. That's grounds for immediate execution, in case your lawyers forgot to mention it. Garrett's face drained of color. You have a choice, Kara continued pleasantly. Surrender peacefully. Face the council. Accept judgment for Ashbrook and for this idiotic assassination attempt. She drew her sword. Or fight. And die. Here. Now. Surrounded by warriors who've been dying for an excuse to end you. Silence fell. 30 Silverbrook wolves against 25 Bloodstone and Thornwood combined. Still bad odds, but not insurmountable. More importantly, not the guarantee Garrett had expected. Lillian saw the moment he realized he'd lost. Saw fury and fear and desperate calculation flicker across his face. Then he did the most cowardly thing possible. He ran. Shifted mid-stride and bolted into the forest, abandoning his wolves, his plan, his dignity. His soldiers stared after him in shock, then, slowly, began lowering their weapons. Anyone else want to die for a coward? Kara called. No? Good choice. Drop the weapons. Shift to human. You're all under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy. The Silverbrook wolves obeyed, confused and leaderless. Liam exhaled roughly. That was terrifying, Lillian finished, legs shaking. Also incredible. Where did Kara? Draven. Kara approached, grinning. Sent me a shadow escort the moment you left Thornwood. Said his tactical sense was screaming about betrayal. Told me to follow at distance, stay hidden, and only intervene if I was about to die, Lillian finished softly. More or less. Kara's expression softened. He's not just protecting you, Lillian. He's protecting your choices. Your autonomy. He knew you needed to feel capable, to believe you were handling this yourself. But he also wasn't about to let you face danger without backup. Lillian's eyes burned. 300 years old, and he still doesn't know how to ask for help. Just silently arranges salvation while pretending I'm independent. It was infuriating. It was also heartbreakingly perfect. We need to keep moving, Liam said, already scanning the forest. Garrett's running scared, but he's not stupid. He'll regroup. Call reinforcements. We need to reach the Covenant grounds before. A howl split the air. Not Garrett. Too far away. Too familiar. Draven. But it wasn't a war cry. It wasn't a victory song. It was grief. Pure, primal, soul-shattering grief, the sound of an alpha whose world had just ended. Lillian's heart stopped. No, she whispered. No, that's not he can't be. Kara's face had gone white. His Majesty would only make that sound if... She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Something had happened. Something terrible. Something that made the Alpha King, the unkillable king, the wolf who'd survived 3 centuries, sound broken. Move. Liam barked. Now. Full speed. They ran. But Lillian knew, with sick certainty, that they were already too late. That whatever had shattered Draven's world had already happened. And that nothing would ever be the same. They found him in a clearing turned graveyard. Draven knelt in human form, his hands buried in scorched earth, surrounded by bodies 15, maybe 20, all bearing bloodstone colors. Warriors who'd ridden with him that morning, who'd laughed and strategized and believed they'd see another sunset. Now they were ash and silence. But it was the figure cradled in Draven's arms that made Lillian's world tilt. Evelyn. The Alpha of Thornwood lay impossibly still, her gray hair matted with blood, her armor shattered, her pale eyes, those sharp, tactical eyes, staring sightlessly at the canopy above. Mom? Liam's voice broke on the word. He stumbled forward, shifted mid-step back to human, naked and vulnerable and young. Mom, no, you can't wake up, please, you have to. Draven's head lifted. The devastation in his face was absolute, gold eyes dimmed to copper, cheeks tracked with tears and ash, mouth twisted in a grimace that might have been agony or rage or both. Ambush, he said, voice scraped raw. Garrett didn't just block the road. He mined it. Old military explosives, buried deep enough our scouts missed them. His hands trembled where they held Evelyn. The front line hit them first. 17 dead instantly. Evelyn, she. His voice cracked. She pushed me clear. Took the blast that was meant for me. And then Garrett's wolves swarmed from the trees, and we were fighting for our lives, and I couldn't. I tried to heal her, tried to stop the bleeding, but silver shrapnel, her chest, she, give her to me. Liam's hands reached out, shaking. Please. I have to. Draven carefully, reverently, transferred Evelyn's body to her son's arms. Liam collapsed to his knees, cradling his mother like she weighed nothing, and the sound that tore from his throat was pure anguish, a young wolf who'd just lost the center of his world. Lillian's eyes burned. She dropped beside them, hands hovering uselessly, healer instincts screaming even though she knew there was nothing to heal. The wounds were catastrophic. The light in Evelyn's eyes was gone. I'm so sorry, Lillian whispered. Liam, this is my fault. Draven's voice cut through grief like shattered glass. He staggered to his feet, swaying. I split our forces. Made us vulnerable. Played right into Garrett's strategy. He wanted me to divide, wanted to isolate and eliminate. Draven, no. She died saving me. The roar echoed through the clearing, made birds scatter. Evelyn sacrificed herself because I was too arrogant, too certain I could outmaneuver a coward with nothing left to lose. His hands clenched, claws extending. And his gaze found Lillian's, and what she saw there made her blood freeze. Not love, not warmth, just fury. You were supposed to be safe. Supposed to take the hidden route while I drew Garrett's attention. But you're here. Which means Kara saved us, Lillian interrupted firmly, standing despite trembling legs. Your backup plan worked. Garrett fled. His wolves surrendered. We have prisoners who'll testify. I don't care about prisoners. Draven's voice broke. I care about the 20 wolves who died today because I miscalculated. Because I was so focused on protecting you that I didn't see the real trap. He turned away, shoulders heaving. Evelyn was right. I'm a warrior, not a politician. I know how to break things, not save them. And now you honor her sacrifice by finishing what she died for. Kara's voice cut through, steady as stone. She'd been directing cleanup, organizing survivors, but now she approached Draven with the careful stance of someone approaching a wounded predator. Alpha Evelyn gave her life, ensuring you'd reach the council. That Lillian would testify. That Garrett would face justice. You want to honor her memory. She gestured at the carnage. Then stop drowning in guilt and lead. Make her death mean something. That's what she'd demand. Draven's jaw worked. I can't. You will. Kara's eyes flashed. Because right now, 60 warriors are watching their king break, and they need to see him stand. They need to believe this sacrifice wasn't for nothing. Her voice gentled fractionally. You can grieve later. Fall apart in private. But here, now, you're the Alpha King. Act like it. Silence stretched fragile, breaking. Then Draven inhaled deeply. Straightened. When he looked up, his expression had shifted into something cold and terrible. The mask of monarchy, all emotion buried beneath duty and determination. Kara's right. His voice was steel now, edged with promise. We proceed to the Covenant grounds. We testify. We bring Garrett before the council, and we make him answer for every life he's taken. His gaze swept the survivors. Evelyn died believing in justice, in laws that matter, in a future where cowards don't hide behind corruption. His hands clenched. We're going to give her that future, even if we have to tear apart the council to do it. Your Majesty, one of the warriors stepped forward hesitantly. What about Alpha Evelyn's body? We can't just. We take her with us. Liam's voice was rough but steady. He stood, still cradling his mother, eyes red but dry. She deserves to lie in state at the Covenant grounds, to be honored by the council she served. His gaze met Draven's. And I'm testifying. Whatever you need me to say about Garrett, about the ambush, about my mother's murder, I'll say it. Under oath. In front of everyone. Liam, you don't have to. I need to. The young Alpha's voice cracked. Please. Let me do this one thing. Let me make her death matter. Draven closed his eyes briefly. When they opened, something almost gentle flickered there. Then we testify together. 3 witnesses, the voice binder, the Alpha King, and the heir who watched his mother die protecting others. He looked at Lillian. Can you still do this? After knowing what it cost. Yes. The word came out stronger than she felt. We end this. For Evelyn. For Finn. For everyone Garrett's destroyed. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only Draven could hear. And then you let yourself feel it. All of it. The grief, the guilt, the rage. You don't bury it and pretend you're fine. Her hand found his blood-stained, trembling. You let me help carry it. That's what. She swallowed hard. That's what people who love each other do. Draven stared at their joined hands. Then, slowly, his fingers tightened around hers. I can't lose you too, he whispered. If something happens at the grounds, if the council tries to imprison you or Garrett makes another attempt, I won't survive it, Lillian. Not after this. Not after. Then we make sure nothing happens. She squeezed his hand. We're smart. We're prepared. And we have something Garrett doesn't. What's that? The truth. Lillian's voice strengthened. And a voice binder who can force him to admit it. They reached the Covenant grounds at sunset. The ancient meeting place sprawled across a valley ringed by mountains, neutral territory held sacred for millennia, where no wolf could draw blood without invoking catastrophic consequences. Massive stone buildings circled a central amphitheater, all of it carved from the same white marble that seemed to glow in fading light. It was beautiful. It was also crawling with guards, council soldiers in ceremonial armor, their faces impassive, their weapons very real despite decorative appearances. Halt! The lead guard stepped forward as their battered party approached. His eyes widened at the sight of Evelyn's shrouded body, at Draven's blood-stained armor, at the wounded warriors limping along. Alpha King Draven. We weren't expecting you until tomorrow, and his gaze landed on Lillian. Is that the voice binder? Her name is Lillian Ashwood, Draven said coldly. She's a council witness under my protection. And yes, we're early because Alpha Garrett attempted to murder us en route. The explosives he planted killed 20 of my warriors and Alpha Evelyn of Thornwood. Shocked silence. The guard swallowed hard. That's a serious accusation, Your Majesty. You have proof. I have 30 Silverbrook prisoners who surrendered after their alpha fled the scene. I have blast residue that'll match Garrett's supply records. And I have 3 witnesses prepared to testify under voicebinder compulsion, which means absolute truth. Draven's smile was sharp as broken glass. So yes, I have proof. The question is, will the council actually enforce their own laws? Or are we all just wasting time watching powerful wolves protect their interests? The guard's face flushed. I'll escort you to your chambers. The emergency council session has been called for dawn tomorrow. All 12 members are present. How convenient. Draven's tone suggested it was anything but. And where, precisely, is Alpha Garrett? Also safely ensconced in council protection. He arrived 3 hours ago, Your Majesty. Claimed he was attacked by rogues and barely escaped with his life. The guard's expression suggested he didn't believe it. He's in the Silverbrook delegation quarters under house arrest, pending investigation. House arrest. Draven's laugh was bitter. So he's comfortable, protected, probably coordinating with his council allies while we bury our dead. Perfect. Your Majesty, I'm just following. I know. Orders. Protocol. The same systems that let monsters operate with impunity. Draven waved dismissively. Just show us to our quarters before I say something that gets me arrested for sedition. They were led through winding corridors, Lillian, Draven, Liam, Kara, and a handful of able-bodied warriors, to a suite of interconnected rooms overlooking the central amphitheater. Luxury accommodations that felt obscene after the day's horrors. Servants appeared with food, medical supplies, offers of assistance. Draven dismissed them all with curt efficiency, then stood at the window staring at the amphitheater below. His hands gripped the stone ledge hard enough to crack. You should eat, Lillian said quietly, approaching with a plate she'd assembled from the rejected offerings. And let someone check those wounds. They're superficial. They're infected. She'd seen him favoring his left side, had caught the scent of silver poisoning beneath blood and ash. Draven, please. I'm fine. But his voice lacked conviction. Lillian set the plate aside and moved directly in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. No, you're not. You're hurt and grieving and blaming yourself for deaths that weren't your fault. Her hands found his face, gentle but insistent. Garrett planted those explosives. Garrett orchestrated the ambush. Garrett murdered Evelyn and 20 others. Not you. I split our forces, he said hoarsely. Made tactical decisions that saved my life. And Liam's. And gave us prisoners to testify. Lillian's thumbs brushed his cheekbones. If you'd kept us together, Garrett would have hit the entire party with explosives. We'd all be dead. Your strategy, your backup plan with Kara, that's the only reason anyone survived. Draven's eyes closed. I keep seeing her face. Evelyn. The moment she realized the explosion was coming, she didn't hesitate, just moved. Threw herself between me and death like it was instinct. Because that's what Pack does, Lillian whispered. What family does. She loved you, Draven. Not as a king. As a brother in arms. As someone worth saving. I'm not. You are. She pulled his forehead down to rest against hers. And tomorrow, we're going to prove it. We're going to stand in front of the council and force them to see what Garrett really is. We're going to make Evelyn's sacrifice count. His arms came around her, desperate, clinging. I love you, he breathed against her hair. I know this isn't the time, nowhere standing in the shadow of death and politics and impossible odds, but I need you to hear it. I love you so much it terrifies me. The door burst open. They sprang apart to find Kara in the entrance, her expression grim. We have a problem, she said. Council just issued new terms for tomorrow's session. What terms? Draven asked, already moving toward her. Kara held out a scroll. They're limiting testimony. No voice binder compulsion allowed during proceedings. They're calling it undue influence. Only voluntary statements under standard oath. Ice flooded Lillian's veins. That means Garrett can lie, Draven finished, voice deadly quiet. Can deny everything. Can spin whatever story his lawyers prepared. He crushed the scroll in his fist. They're protecting him. Even after murder, after attempted assassination, after everything, the council is still choosing politics over justice. There's more. Kara looked physically pained. They're requiring Lillian to submit to magical evaluation before being allowed to testify, to ensure she's not a threat to council members. The evaluation will take place tonight, conducted by council-appointed mages. Absolutely not. Draven's eyes flashed gold. That's not evaluation. That's imprisonment. They'll find some excuse to detain her, to declare her too dangerous to silence the one person who can force truth, Lillian finished. She felt strangely calm, like she'd known this was coming. They're not even pretending anymore. They want me gone. Then we leave. Draven was already moving, issuing orders. Now, we gather our warriors, break through the perimeter, head for unclaimed territories. And prove we're exactly as lawless as they claim? Lillian caught his arm. Draven, no. We can't run. That's what they want for us, to break protocol, to seem like threats, to justify whatever measures they take next. Then what do you suggest? His voice was raw. Let them evaluate you? Let them find you guilty of existing while powerful? No. Lillian's mind raced, pieces clicking into place. I suggest we beat them at their own game. She turned to face both Kara and Draven. They want me to submit to evaluation? Fine. I'll do it. Publicly. In the amphitheater, where every wolf at the Covenant grounds can watch. Her voice strengthened. Let them test my abilities in full view. Let them try to prove I'm dangerous. And when they can't, when I demonstrate control, precision, ethical use of voice binding, the council loses their excuse to detain you, Kara finished, catching on. And looks tyrannical for even trying. Exactly. Lillian looked at Draven. You said Evelyn believed in laws that matter. In systems that work. This is how we honor that, by forcing the council to follow their own rules. By making them choose between justice and corruption in full public view. Draven stared at her. That's brilliant. Also terrifying. Also probably going to get you killed. Probably. Lillian managed a shaky smile. But at least I'll die fighting. That's better than running. Better than letting Garrett win. She stepped closer, rising on her toes to kiss him, soft, brief, full of promise and goodbye in equal measure. Trust me, she whispered against his lips. One more time. Trust that I know what I'm doing. Draven's hands framed her face, holding her like something precious and breakable. I trust you, he said hoarsely. But if anything goes wrong, if they try to hurt you, then you burn it all down, Lillian finished. I know. I'm counting on it. She pulled away before her courage failed, turning to Kara. Arrange the public evaluation. Make sure word spreads. I want every warrior, every delegate, every wolf at the grounds watching. Make it impossible for the council to hide what they're doing. Kara grinned, fierce and proud. With pleasure. This is going to be magnificent or catastrophic. Possibly both. That's my specialty, Lillian said with more confidence than she felt. Because tomorrow, she would stand before the council. Tomorrow, she would prove her worth. Tomorrow, she would face the monsters who'd killed Finn, who'd murdered Evelyn, who'd corrupted justice into a weapon of the powerful. And she would win. Or die trying. The night passed in fits of preparation and restless anxiety. Lillian spent hours with Mara's journal, absorbing every technique, every warning, every hard-won lesson her ancestor had documented. She practiced control exercises, silencing candle flames with a word, compelling dropped objects to freeze mid-fall, extending her reach until she could feel the ambient dominance of every alpha within 100 yards. The power grew with each attempt. Steadier. Surer. Terrifying. You're getting stronger, Liam observed from the doorway. He'd been silent for hours, sitting vigil with his mother's body in the adjacent room. Now he looked exhausted, hollowed out, but present. I can feel it, like pressure building in the air before a storm. Is that bad? Lillian asked. Depends on who's holding the lightning. He entered fully, settling into a chair across from her. My mother liked you. Said you had spine. Potential. His voice cracked slightly. She would have wanted to see you face the council. Would have been proud to know her death helped get you there. I'm so sorry, Liam. If I hadn't. Don't. He held up a hand. Don't take responsibility for Garrett's evil. Mom taught me that you can't control what monsters do. You can only control how you respond. His green eyes, so like Evelyn's, held fierce determination. I'm testifying tomorrow, telling the council exactly what happened. How she died saving the Alpha King. How Garrett murdered her and 20 others in cold blood. His jaw set. And if they try to dismiss it, try to protect him. Then we make them listen, Lillian finished. Together. They sat in companionable silence until dawn painted the windows gold. Until servants knocked to announce the council was assembling. Until it was time. Draven appeared in full ceremonial armor, black and silver, marked with the bloodstone crest, magnificent and terrible. His dark hair was bound back, his face a mask of calm authority that didn't reach his eyes. Those gold eyes burned when they found Lillian's. Ready? He asked quietly. No. Lillian stood, smoothing her simple tunic. She'd refused formal dress, refused to play pretend. But I'm doing it anyway. He crossed to her, caught her hands. Whatever happens down there, whatever they say, whatever they try, remember, you're not alone. I'm with you. Liam's with you. Kara and every warrior who's ever seen your courage is with you. His thumb brushed her knuckles. And if they cross the line? If they try to imprison or harm you? His smile was all wolf. I'll remind them exactly why crossing an Alpha King is fatal. Then he kissed her, deep and desperate and full of everything words couldn't capture, before pulling away and offering his arm. Come, little healer. Let's go change the world. Together, they descended into the amphitheater. Into the judgment of the council. Into the moment that would define everything. The amphitheater was packed. Lillian had expected council members, their advisors, maybe a few witnesses. Instead, she found hundreds, warriors from every territory, delegates representing packs across the northern hemisphere, even civilians who'd somehow gained entry. They filled the stone tiers in a sea of faces, all watching with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility to hope. Kara wasn't kidding about spreading word, Lillian thought. This isn't a hearing. It's a spectacle. The council sat elevated on a curved dais, 12 alphas representing the most powerful territories, all ancient, all draped in ceremonial robes that couldn't quite hide predatory instincts. Lillian recognized a few from Draven's briefings: Alpha Marcus of Ire Peak, severe and calculating. Alpha Helena of Mistwood, beautiful and ruthless. Alpha Tobias of Stohart, who'd supposedly funded 3 of Garrett's expansion projects. And in the center, presiding with cold authority. High Alpha Thorn, eldest of the council, his white hair and scarred face marking centuries of survival. Order. His voice cracked like thunder. The amphitheater fell silent. We convene this emergency session to address multiple charges: attempted murder of a council witness, unauthorized use of military explosives, the deaths of Alpha Evelyn of Thornwood and 20 Bloodstone warriors. His pale eyes found Garrett, who sat in a designated area with his lawyers, looking pale but composed, playing the victim perfectly. Alpha Garrett of Silverbrook, you stand accused. How do you plead? Garrett rose with practiced dignity. Not guilty, High Alpha. I'm a victim myself, attacked by rogues, barely escaped with my life. These accusations are politically motivated attempts to save it for testimony. Thorn interrupted. We'll hear evidence first. He gestured to the center of the amphitheater. Alpha King Draven, you brought these charges. Present your case. Draven stepped forward, magnificent and terrible in his armor, every inch the monarch. High Council. 3 days ago, my party was ambushed on the road to these grounds. Military-grade explosives, silver core charges designed to kill wolves, were buried along the route. The blast killed 17 warriors instantly. Alpha Evelyn died from her wounds shortly after. His voice was steel. We have 30 Silverbrook soldiers in custody who surrendered after their Alpha fled the scene. We have blast residue that matches Silverbrook's military supplies. We have 3 witnesses prepared to testify under oath. Under voice-binder compulsion, you mean, Alpha Helena interjected, her tone sharp, which this council has already ruled inadmissible due to concerns about magical coercion. Then we testify voluntarily, Lillian said, stepping forward before Draven could respond. Every eye swiveled to her. My name is Lillian Ashwood. I'm the voice-binder everyone's so afraid of. And I'm prepared to demonstrate my abilities publicly so the council can judge for themselves whether I'm a threat or a tool for justice. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. High Alpha Thorn leaned forward. You're offering to submit to evaluation? Voluntarily. I am. Right here. Right now. In full view of everyone assembled. Lillian's heart hammered, but her voice stayed steady. Test my abilities. See what I can do. Judge whether voice binding is dangerous or whether your fear is. Silence fell, heavy, anticipating. Then Garrett laughed. This is ridiculous, he said, standing despite his lawyer's attempts to pull him back down. We're supposed to trust the word of a rogue? A girl who murdered 4 of my guards, burned my outpost, and now claims magical powers that haven't existed in centuries. He gestured dismissively. She's a liar and a terrorist. Probably delusional. And we're wasting time. Silence, Lillian said quietly. The word punched through the amphitheater like a physical blow. Garrett's mouth snapped shut mid-sentence. His eyes went wide, shocked, furious, terrified. He tried to speak, lips forming words that wouldn't come, hands flying to his throat. The council erupted. She attacked him. Unprovoked magical assault. Seize her. Wait. Draven's roar cut through the chaos. She didn't attack. She demonstrated. Exactly as offered. Garrett was speaking. She silenced him. Temporarily. Non-violently. No physical harm. He turned to address the council directly. This is what voice binding does. It forces silence. Compels listening. Levels the playing field when alphas use dominance to shut down communication. His voice carried absolute authority. Is it powerful? Yes. Is it dangerous in the wrong hands? Absolutely. But so is alpha command, and we don't imprison every alpha for having the potential to abuse power. That's different, Alpha Marcus started. Is it? Lillian interrupted. Her hand shook, but she pressed on. Alphas command through voice and dominance. You force submission, compel obedience, silence dissent through sheer presence. How is that less controlling than what I just did? She looked directly at Garrett, who was still frozen, unable to speak. The difference is choice. I chose to silence him non-violently instead of letting him derail these proceedings with lies and theater. I'll choose to release him in a moment, unharmed, because I'm not interested in enslavement or abuse. She inhaled slowly. Speak. Garrett's voice returned with a gasp. He stumbled, caught himself, face flushed with rage and humiliation. I demand she be arrested, he sputtered. Magical assault on a council witness is exactly what you tried to do with explosives, Liam said, standing from where he'd been sitting with the Thornwood delegation. His voice was steady despite red-rimmed eyes. Only you used silver and fire instead of words. And you killed my mother. He walked to the center of the amphitheater, every eye tracking him. I'm Liam of Thornwood. Heir to the territory Alpha Garrett's explosives just destroyed the leadership of. He held up a silver shard, preserved in a clear container. This is shrapnel pulled from my mother's chest. Silver core, Silverbrook manufacture. We have receipts proving Garrett purchased 50 of these charges 6 months ago, claiming they were for defensive purposes. He set the container down with deliberate care. My mother died pushing Alpha King Draven out of an explosion's path. She bled out in his arms while Garrett's wolves swarmed from the trees, trying to finish what the blast started. His voice broke. So yes, Council, I'm biased. But I'm also telling the truth. And I'll swear to it under any oath you require. The amphitheater had gone deathly silent. High Alpha Thorn studied Liam with unreadable eyes. You're aware perjury before this council is punishable by death? I am. And you're willing to stake your life on this testimony? I stake it on my mother's memory, Liam said quietly. Which is worth more than my life anyway. Thorn nodded slowly. Turned to Lillian. And you, voice binder. You claim you can compel truth? Prove it. This was it. The moment everything hinged on. Lillian stepped forward, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes, of history, of her ancestors' legacy pressing down. I can force truth, she said clearly. But I won't. Not without consent. Shocked murmurs. What? Alpha Helena leaned forward. You offer to demonstrate, then refuse? I refuse to violate someone's autonomy without permission, Lillian corrected. Compulsion, true compulsion, strips choice. Unmakes will. That's slavery, and I won't use it except as absolute last resort when lives are at stake. She gestured to Garrett. But I can offer him a choice. Let me use voice binding to ensure his testimony is truthful, or testify under standard oath knowing everyone here will wonder what he's hiding. Garrett's face went purple. I refuse. I won't submit to magical violation. Then testify without it, Draven said smoothly. Answer the charges. Explain the explosives. Tell us why 30 of your wolves surrendered the moment you fled. Surely an innocent alpha has nothing to hide. The trap was elegant. Refuse voice binding and look guilty. Accept it and be forced to tell truth. Garrett's lawyers huddled around him, whispering frantically. Then one stood, a silver-haired woman with calculating eyes. The defense requests a recess. To consult with our client and prepare proper response to these irregular proceedings. Denied, High Alpha Thorn said flatly. These charges involve murder of an Alpha and Council member. Time is not a luxury we're granting. He fixed Garrett with a stare that could strip paint. You have 2 choices, Alpha Garrett. Submit to voice binder questioning here and now, or testify under standard oath. Decide. Garrett looked trapped. Desperate. Then his eyes landed on something in the crowd, someone, and his expression shifted. I'll testify, he said. Under standard oath. Without magical interference. He stood, radiating false confidence. I didn't plant those explosives. Didn't order any ambush. I was traveling to the Covenant grounds when rogues attacked my party. We barely escaped. Any suggestion otherwise is liar, Lillian said. Not a command. Not voice binding. Just a statement, clear and absolute. I never. You paid an assassin 20,000 to kill me at Thornwood Hold, Lillian continued, walking toward him slowly. He confessed under compulsion after trying to murder Liam. We have his testimony. We have the money trail. That's... You ordered the raid on Ashbrook Village 6 months ago. Called it territorial cleansing. Your warriors killed 23 civilians, including children. Her voice shook with fury. My 9-year-old brother shifted for the first time, and your soldiers put silver through his heart. Called it protocol. He was a threat. He was a child. The words cracked like thunder. And you murdered him. Murdered Evelyn. Murdered 20 of Draven's warriors. All because you're a coward who hides behind corruption instead of facing consequences. She stopped directly in front of him, and power hummed beneath her skin, cold, fast, ready. Last chance, Garrett. Tell the truth voluntarily. Admit what you've done. Or I'll make you. You can't. The council ruled. The council ruled against compulsion during testimony, Lillian interrupted. But you haven't testified yet. Right now, you're just talking. Lying. Obstructing justice. She felt Mara's words guiding her. When they come for you, do not go gentle. Make them remember. Kneel, Lillian commanded. Power flooded out in a wave that made the air shimmer. Garrett's legs buckled, not gently, but like someone had cut his strings. He crashed to his knees, eyes wide with terror. No, stop, this is assault. This is justice, Lillian corrected. Around the amphitheater, wolves watched with expressions ranging from horror to satisfaction. And it's long overdue. She crouched to his eye level. You're going to tell the truth now. Every word. Every crime. Every life you've destroyed. Her voice dropped to something cold and absolute. Not because I'm compelling you, though I could, but because everyone here deserves to hear it. Deserves to know what kind of monster the council's been protecting. I won't. You can't make me. Lillian smiled, sad and sharp. Tell them what you did at Ashbrook. The compulsion hit like a hammer. Garrett's mouth opened, fighting, resisting, but the words came anyway. We raided the village. Burned it. Lord Caldwell wanted the territory cleared for development, so I gave the order. No survivors. Make it look like rogues. His voice shook with fury and fear. The kid shifted, startled one of my warriors. It was an accident, but we couldn't leave witnesses so. You murdered him, Lillian finished. A 9-year-old boy. On purpose. Yes. The word burst from him like confession. Yes, we killed him. Killed all of them. Because Lord Caldwell paid me $50,000 and promised council support if I... He stopped, realizing what he'd just admitted. The amphitheater erupted. Lord Caldwell. The council liaison? He's been funding Garrett's expansion? High Alpha Thorne's face had gone stone cold. Alpha Garrett. Did you just confess to murder for hire sponsored by a council official? Garrett's eyes were wild. I know, she made me the voice binding. Didn't force anything you weren't already guilty of, Draven said, moving to stand beside Lillian. She gave you choice. You chose to speak. The words were yours. He addressed the council directly. This is what corruption looks like. What happens when power protects power instead of serving justice. Garrett murdered civilians, murdered an alpha, murdered my warriors, all while hiding behind council allies and legal manipulation. His voice rose, carrying to every corner of the amphitheater. And if this council chooses politics over justice again? Chooses to protect wealth and influence over accountability? His eyes flashed gold. Then I'm done. Done playing by rules that only protect the powerful. Done pretending the system works when it clearly doesn't. You're threatening secession? Alpha Marcus demanded. I'm promising revolution, Draven corrected. Because wolves like Garrett don't just happen. They're created by systems that value profit over lives. By councils that look the other way when convenient. He moved to the center of the amphitheater, addressing not the council, but the crowd, the warriors, the delegates, the witnesses. How many of you have seen injustice like this? Watched powerful wolves commit crimes without consequence? Been told to accept it because that's how things work. Murmurs rippled. Nods. Angry growls of agreement. That ends today, Draven said. Either this council enforces its own laws, executes Garrett, investigates Caldwell, reforms the corruption that enabled this, or we tear it down and build something better. That's sedition. Alpha Helena was on her feet. That's democracy, Lillian countered, surprising herself. Rule by consent of the governed, not by force of the powerful. She looked at High Alpha Thorne. You have a choice. Be the council that chose justice. Or be the council that history remembers as corrupt and cowardly. Silence fell, absolute, waiting. Thorne's ancient eyes swept the assembly. Took in the angry faces, the nodding heads, the clear support for Draven's position. When he spoke, his voice carried centuries of authority. Alpha Marcus Garrett of Silverbrook. By your own confession, compelled or not, you stand guilty of multiple counts of murder, conspiracy, and treason against council law. His gaze was merciless. The sentence is death. Immediate. Public. To serve as warning to any other alpha who believes power exempts them from justice. Garrett's face went white. No, wait. I can explain, Lord Caldwell promised. Lord Caldwell will be investigated, Thorne interrupted, as will every council member whose finances show connections to your territories. This council may be flawed, but it's not beyond redemption. He stood, and the other council members rose with him, some reluctantly, some with clear relief. As for the voice binder, Thorne's eyes found Lillian's. Your abilities are powerful, potentially dangerous. But today, you demonstrated restraint, ethics, the wisdom to offer choice instead of compulsion. He inclined his head slight, but unmistakable. You have this council's protection, and our gratitude. The first voice binder in 2 centuries just reminded us why your kind existed, to force truth when power would prefer comfortable lies. Lillian's knees nearly buckled with relief. However, Thorne continued, we require you to accept oversight. Regular check-ins. Proof that you're using your gift responsibly. He paused. Unless Alpha King Draven is willing to personally guarantee your conduct? Every eye turned to Draven. He didn't hesitate. I am. Lillian Ashwood is under my protection. Part of my pack. If she abuses her power, I'll answer for it. His hand found hers, tangling their fingers in front of hundreds of witnesses. And if anyone tries to harm her, imprison her, or eliminate her because they fear what she represents, his smile was all teeth. They'll answer to me. Personally. The promise hung in the air, clear, absolute, terrifying. High Alpha Thorne smiled faintly. Then it settled. Garrett faces execution at sunset. Lord Caldwell faces investigation. And the voice binder remains free under Bloodstone protection. He turned to the guards. Take the prisoner. Prepare the execution grounds. And someone find Lord Caldwell before he flees jurisdiction. As guards moved to seize Garrett, who collapsed into pleading, desperate excuses, as the council descended into organized chaos, as the amphitheater erupted with voices and reactions. Draven pulled Lillian into his arms. You did it, he breathed against her hair. You brilliant, terrifying, impossible woman. You actually did it. We did it, Lillian corrected, tears streaming down her face. For Evelyn. For Finn. For everyone who deserved justice. She pulled back to look at him, and the gold in his eyes was warm now, burning with something other than fury. I love you, she said clearly. Not because you're a king or because you protected me, but because you believed in justice enough to risk everything. Because you saw me as a person, not a weapon. Because... He kissed her. Deep and thorough and absolutely heedless of the hundreds of wolves watching. When they finally broke apart, Liam was beside them, smiling through tears. Mom would have loved this, he said quietly. The drama. The victory. The way you just reshaped pack politics in one morning. Evelyn reshaped it, Draven corrected. By believing in justice. By sacrificing herself for that belief. We just finished her work. Then let's honor her properly, Liam said. With the ceremony she deserves. Tonight, after he swallowed hard. After Garrett's execution. Around them, the amphitheater began to empty, wolves clustering in excited groups, discussing what they'd witnessed, what it meant for the future. Kara appeared, grinning like violence and vindication. Boss, you just threatened revolution in front of the High Council and lived. I'm impressed. I had good backup. Draven squeezed Lillian's hand. And a voice binder who reminded everyone why truth matters more than power. Does this mean we're famous now? Lillian asked weakly. Because I really just wanted to avenge my brother and not die. Fame sounds exhausting. Too late, Kara laughed. You just became the most talked about wolf in the Northern Territories. Also possibly the most terrifying. That thing you did to Garrett? Forcing confession in front of hundreds. She whistled. That's going to be legend within a week. Fantastic, Lillian muttered. Exactly what I wanted. To be legendary and terrifying. Could be worse, Draven said, pulling her close again. You could be legendary, terrifying, and alone. Instead, you're legendary, terrifying, and stuck with an alpha king who's hopelessly in love with you. Stuck with is a strong phrase. Too late, he murmured against her ear. You already admitted you love me in front of the entire council. No taking it back now. I hate you, Lillian said without conviction. Liar. And despite everything, the grief, the exhaustion, the knowledge that Garrett's execution still loomed. Lillian smiled. Because they'd won. Justice had prevailed. And for the first time in 6 months, she could breathe without drowning in ash and loss. Sunset painted the execution grounds in shades of blood and gold. Lillian stood beside Draven on the raised platform reserved for witnesses, watching as guards brought Garrett to the center of the ancient stone circle. The Silverbrook Alpha had stopped pleading hours ago, had moved through denial and bargaining into hollow-eyed acceptance. He looked small now. Mortal. Nothing like the powerful wolf who'd ordered villages burned and children murdered. Good, Lillian thought. Let him feel powerless. Let him understand what Finn felt in those final moments. You don't have to watch, Draven murmured, his hand finding hers. No one would think less of you for. I need to see it. Lillian's voice was steady. Need to know it's real. That he's actually gone. That he can't hurt anyone else. Around them, hundreds had gathered, not for entertainment, but for witness. For closure. Representatives from every territory Garrett had terrorized, families of wolves he'd killed, warriors who'd survived his ambushes. They stood in respectful silence as High Alpha Thorn stepped forward. Alpha Marcus Garrett, Thorn's voice carried across the grounds. You have been found guilty of murder, conspiracy, and crimes against pack law. The sentence is death by Alpha Challenge, swift, honorable, more mercy than you showed your victims. He gestured, and a massive gray wolf stepped forward. Commander Mara, Evelyn's second. The one who'd served Thornwood for 70 years and watched her alpha die protecting others. Of course, Lillian thought. Of course Thorn would choose her. It's fitting. Garrett's face drained of color. I surrender. I don't want to fight. Please, Coward, Mara said, her voice carrying despite its softness. Even now, even facing consequence. She shifted in a ripple of power, bones restructuring, fur flowing, until a steel-gray wolf stood where the commander had been. A wolf whose eyes promised pain. For Evelyn, she said, one of the few times a wolf spoke in animal form, the words coming rough but clear. For Ashbrook. For every life you stole. Then she lunged. It was over in seconds. Garrett tried to shift, tried to fight, but Mara was faster, stronger, fueled by righteous fury. Her jaws found his throat, one savage shake, and the Silverbrook Alpha's body went limp. The silence that followed felt sacred. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a voice rose in the traditional death song, a haunting melody wolves sang to honor the fallen. Normally reserved for heroes, for alphas who'd served their packs with distinction. But today, it was for the victims. For Evelyn. For Finn. For the 20 warriors who died in fire and explosion. For every wolf whose life Garrett had stolen in his quest for power and profit. Lillian's voice joined the song, rough, breaking, but present. Beside her, Draven's deep baritone harmonized. Then Liam's tenor. Kara's alto. Until hundreds of wolves sang together, voices rising toward a darkening sky. Singing not for Garrett, but for everyone he destroyed. When the last note faded, Mara shifted back to human form and addressed the assembly. Justice is done, she said quietly. Alpha Garrett is gone. But the work isn't finished. We have systems to reform, corruption to root out, and futures to build where power serves pack instead of exploiting it. She looked directly at Lillian. The voice binders showed us today what accountability looks like. What happens when truth is forced to light. I hope her voice caught. I hope Evelyn saw it. Wherever alphas go when we die, I hope she knows her sacrifice mattered. Lillian felt tears streaming down her face. It did. I swear it did. Mara nodded once, then stepped aside as servants moved to remove Garrett's body. The crowd began to disperse, some lingering to share memories, others seeking quiet to process, still others heading toward the great hall where Evelyn's memorial would be held at midnight. Draven pulled Lillian into his arms, and she went willingly, pressing her face against his chest and letting 6 months of grief finally break. I know, he murmured into her hair. I know. Let it out, little healer. You've been holding it together for so long. You're allowed to shatter now. So she did. Sobbed into his shirt while he held her, while Kara kept watch to give them privacy, while the sun set on the day that changed everything. When she finally pulled back, eyes red, face blotchy, emotionally wrung out, Draven was smiling. What? Lillian asked, voice rough. You're beautiful when you're falling apart, he said. Also when you're terrifying counsels and forcing confessions. But especially when you let yourself be human instead of untouchable. I'm not untouchable. I'm a mess. You're my mess. He cupped her face. And after we honor Evelyn tonight, after we've fulfilled our duties to the dead, I'm taking you somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can talk without politics or danger or death breathing down our necks. Talk. Lillian raised an eyebrow. Is that code for something? Maybe. His smile turned wicked. But also actual talking. Because we have things to discuss. Like where you want to live. What you want to do with your abilities. Whether you're interested in becoming Bloodstone's official voice binder and pack healer. Whether. He stopped, suddenly nervous. Whether you'd consider being my mate. Officially. Bonded. All the ceremony and politics and claiming that comes with loving an Alpha King. Lillian's breath caught. Draven. I know it's fast. I know we've barely had time to exist outside of crisis. But I'm 300 years old, Lillian. I know what I want. Who I want. His gold eyes burned into hers. And I want you. Not as witness or weapon or magical artifact. As my partner. My equal. She kissed him to shut him up. Kissed him like they had all the time in the world, like sunset wasn't fading tonight, like they weren't standing in execution grounds surrounded by the ghosts of their choices. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Lillian smiled. Ask me again tomorrow, she said. After Evelyn's memorial. After we've slept and processed and had time to actually think. Ask me when we're not standing in blood and grief. And you'll say yes? His voice held hope and fear in equal measure. I'll say, she pretended to consider. I'll say we'll see. That I need to negotiate terms. That Alpha Kings don't get to just demand things and expect immediate compliance. Lillian. But probably yes, she admitted, grinning at his expression. Because apparently I love stubborn, overprotective, impossible alphas who threaten revolution to protect me. Who knew that was my type? Draven laughed, genuine, joyful, the sound of 300 years of weightlifting. Come on, he said, offering his arm. Let's go honor the dead properly. Then tomorrow, we start building the future they died for. Evelyn's memorial was held at midnight beneath a full moon. The amphitheater had been transformed, thousands of candles creating rivers of light, white flowers carpeting the stone, and at the center, Evelyn's body laid out in full ceremonial dress with her hands folded over her chest. She looked peaceful, regal, like a queen who'd earned her rest. Liam stood at her head, face composed despite the tears tracking down his cheeks. My mother was a warrior before she was an alpha, he said, addressing the assembled crowd. She fought in the Northern Wars, lost her mate defending our borders, built Thornwood into a territory where strength served pack instead of breaking it. His voice strengthened. She taught me that power without compassion is tyranny. That justice matters more than politics. That protecting the vulnerable isn't weakness, it's the highest calling of leadership. He looked at Draven, at Lillian, at the faces gathered to mourn. She died protecting Alpha King Draven. Died believing in laws that matter, in systems that can be reformed, in futures worth sacrificing for. His jaw tightened. And I swear on her memory, on Thornwood's honor, I will spend my life building that future, making her sacrifice count. Around the amphitheater, wolves howled in agreement, a chorus of voices promising remembrance, promising change, promising that Evelyn's death would reshape pack politics for generations. When the howls faded, Draven stepped forward. I've lived 300 years, he said quietly. Fought countless battles. Lost warriors, friends, wolves I considered family. But I've never, his voice cracked, never lost someone who died in my place. Who chose my life over hers without hesitation. He knelt beside Evelyn's body, placed one hand over her folded ones. You deserved better, old friend. Deserved to see your son become Alpha. Deserved to watch the council reform. Deserved to live in the future you believed in. Tears tracked down his face, unashamed. I can't give you those things. But I can promise to honor your sacrifice. To be the king you believed I could be, one who serves justice instead of just maintaining power. Who protects the vulnerable instead of exploiting them. He stood, addressing the crowd. Tomorrow, I'm calling for council reformation. Term limits. Public oversight. Systems to prevent corruption before it takes root. And I'm establishing the first voicebinder position in 2 centuries, a check on alpha power, a force for accountability. His eyes found Lillian's. Because Evelyn was right. We need bridges between dominance and diplomacy. We need wolves who can force truth when power would prefer comfortable lies. He extended his hand to Lillian, pulling her forward. Lillian Ashwood, last of the voicebinder line. If you'll accept, I'm offering you sanctuary in Bloodstone territory. A position as official voicebinder and pack healer. And he paused. And the chance to help me reshape pack politics into something Evelyn would be proud of. Lillian looked at Evelyn's peaceful face. At Liam's determined expression. At the hundreds of wolves watching with expressions ranging from hope to skepticism to cautious optimism. I accept, she said clearly. For Evelyn. For my brother. For every wolf who deserves better than corrupt systems and powerful predators. She squeezed Draven's hand. And because someone needs to keep this stubborn Alpha King from threatening revolution every time politics gets frustrating. Laughter rippled through the crowd, unexpected, cathartic, necessary. The memorial continued through the night, stories shared, memories honored, promises made. As dawn approached, servants built a pyre according to Thornwood tradition. Evelyn's body was placed atop with ceremony and reverence. Liam lit the fire personally. They watched in silence as flames consumed the physical form of a great alpha, sending her spirit skyward in smoke and sparks. She would have loved this, Kara said quietly, appearing at Lillian's elbow. The drama. The political upheaval. The knowledge that her death literally changed pack law. She would have hated dying, Lillian countered. Well, yeah, but if she had to go. Kara's smile was sad. Going out protecting the Alpha King while inspiring revolutionary reform? That's pretty on brand for Evelyn. As the sun rose over the Covenant grounds, painting the sky in shades of hope and possibility, Lillian felt something shift in her chest. Not healing. Not yet. The grief would take time, would probably never fully fade. But forward motion. The sense that life continued. That she had purpose beyond vengeance, beyond survival. That maybe, impossibly, there was room for joy alongside the sorrow. Come on, Draven murmured, wrapping an arm around her waist. Let's get you fed, rested, and ready to start building our future. Our future. Lillian tested the words. They felt strange and wonderful. I like the sound of that. Good. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Because you're stuck with me now, little healer. For the duration. How long is the duration for an Alpha King? Centuries, if we're lucky. Maybe longer if we're really lucky and avoid assassination attempts. His smile was pure mischief. Think you can tolerate me that long? Lillian pretended to consider. I suppose I can manage. If you promise to only threaten revolution occasionally. And let me tell you to shut up when you're being insufferable. Deal. They walked away from the pyre, from grief and sacrifice and endings, toward the great hall where breakfast waited and futures beckoned. Behind them, Liam stood vigil as his mother's ashes rose toward morning sky. Kara organized warriors for the journey home. The council convened to discuss reforms that would reshape pack politics. And somewhere, Lillian liked to imagine, Finn and Evelyn watched from whatever place brave wolves went when they died, proud, at peace, knowing their sacrifices had mattered. 3 months later, the ceremony took place in Bloodstone's Great Hall, transformed for the occasion into something magnificent. White flowers, Lillian had insisted, remembering Evelyn covered every surface. Candles created constellations of light. And every important wolf in the Northern Territories had gathered to witness history. The bonding of Alpha King Draven to Lillian Ashwood, voice binder and pack healer. Lillian wore deep blue silk that Kara had basically forced on her, claiming, "You're becoming queen. You can't wear your fighting leathers to your own bonding ceremony. Have some dignity." She felt ridiculous and beautiful in equal measure. Draven wore formal black with silver threading, looking every inch the powerful alpha he was. But when his eyes found hers across the hall, the expression on his face was pure, unguarded love. Nervous? Kara whispered from beside her. The warrior had insisted on being Lillian's honor guard, claiming someone needed to ensure she actually made it to the ceremony without fleeing. Terrified, Lillian admitted. What if I'm terrible at being queen? What if I can't handle the politics and responsibility and... Then you'll figure it out, Kara interrupted. Same way you figured out voice binding. Same way you survived 6 months alone. Same way you faced down the council and won. She squeezed Lillian's shoulder. You're stronger than you think. Braver than you believe. And you've got an entire pack ready to support you, including one very besotted Alpha King who looks about 3 seconds from abandoning protocol and carrying you off. Lillian glanced at Draven. He did indeed look impatient, his foot tapping, his eyes never leaving her face. Well, she said, can't keep him waiting. Apparently that's bad for Alpha Kings. She walked down the aisle, no father to give her away, no family except the pack she'd found, toward the male who'd seen her at her worst and somehow decided she was worth loving anyway. High Alpha Thorn presided, because apparently reforming council corruption meant he was determined to personally oversee major pack events. We gather to witness a bonding, Thorn said, his ancient voice carrying easily. Between Alpha King Draven of Bloodstone and Lillian Ashwood, voice binder and healer. A union that represents not just love, but partnership. Not just power, but balance. He gestured them forward. Draven took Lillian's hands, and the contact sent warmth flooding through her. I, Draven, Alpha King of Bloodstone, claim you as mate, he said, the traditional words carrying weight and magic. I offer you my protection, my loyalty, my pack and territories. I swear to stand beside you in triumph and tragedy, to honor your strength, to celebrate your victories, to share your burdens. His voice softened. And to love you, fiercely, permanently, with everything I am and everything I'll become. Lillian's eyes burned with happy tears. I, Lillian Ashwood, voice binder and healer, accept your claim, she said, her voice only shaking slightly. I offer you my truth, my courage, my abilities and healing. I swear to stand beside you in peace and chaos, to challenge your arrogance, to support your dreams, to share this impossible life. She smiled through tears. And to love you, stubbornly, eternally, even when you're insufferable. Laughter rippled through the crowd. The bond is recognized, Thorn said. Witnessed. Blessed by tradition and pack law. He paused, eyes twinkling. You may now. Draven kissed her before Thorn finished speaking. Deep and thorough and absolutely heedless of protocol, lifting her off her feet and spinning her while the hall erupted in cheers and howls and celebration. When he finally set her down, both breathless and grinning, he whispered, "Mine." "Yours," Lillian agreed. "Also mine." "That goes both ways, Alpha King." "Wouldn't have it any other way." The celebration lasted until dawn, feasting, music, wolves from every territory mingling in unprecedented harmony. Lillian danced with Draven, with Kara, with Liam, who'd traveled from Thornwood specifically for the ceremony. "Congratulations," Liam said as they spun across the floor. "Mom would have loved this. Would have given you so much unsolicited advice about managing an Alpha King." "I could use that advice," Lillian admitted. "He's already threatened revolution twice this week over trade disputes." "That's just how he shows affection," Liam laughed. "Through excessive protectiveness and dramatic gestures." As midnight approached, Draven pulled her aside into a quiet corridor away from celebration and noise. "I have something for you," he said, producing a small wooden box. "A bonding gift." Lillian opened it to find a silver pendant, a wolf mid-howl, exquisitely detailed, hanging from a delicate chain. "It was Evelyn's," Draven said quietly. "She wore it during the Northern Wars. Said it reminded her why she fought for pack, for family, for futures worth protecting." His hands were gentle as he fastened it around Lillian's neck. "Liam thought you should have it. Said his mother would want her legacy carried by someone who understood its weight." Lillian's fingers traced the pendant. "I'll honor it. I swear." "I know you will." He pulled her close. "You're already changing pack politics, little healer. The council's implementing reforms. 3 new voice binder candidates have been identified, distant relatives of yours, apparently. And wolves are actually talking about problems instead of defaulting to violence." "That's terrifying," Lillian said. "What if I can't live up to expectations?" "What if?" "Then we'll figure it out together," Draven interrupted. "That's what mates do. What partners do. You're not alone anymore, Lillian. You've got me. Got Kara and Liam and an entire pack who'd follow you into hell if you asked." He cupped her face. "So stop worrying about being perfect. Just be you." The woman who told an Alpha King to shut up. Who forced a council to choose justice. Who survived impossible odds and came out stronger. "And who loves you," Lillian added softly. "Don't forget that part. Never." His kiss was gentle this time, full of promise. "Ready to face our future, my queen?" "With you." Lillian smiled. "Always." They returned to the celebration, to their pack, their family, their impossible, hard-won happiness. And somewhere in the stars above Bloodstone, Lillian liked to imagine 2 spirits watching, a 9-year-old boy with his whole life ahead of him, and a fierce alpha who'd given hers to protect others. Watching. Approving. Finally at peace. Because justice had been served. Love had prevailed. And the future they died for? It was just beginning. Epilogue. 1 year later. The council chambers had changed. Where once there'd been 12 alphas operating with minimal oversight, now there were term limits. Public observers. And in the center, mediating disputes with patience and occasional force. Lillian Ashwood, official voice binder to the High Council. "Absolutely not," she said firmly, silencing Alpha Marcus mid-rant about territorial boundaries. "You've had 3 minutes to make your point. Now Alpha Helena gets to respond without interruption." That's how discussions work. Marcus's mouth snapped shut not from compulsion, but from respect. She rarely used her full power anymore. Rarely needed to. The threat was enough. "Thank you, voice binder," Helena said with genuine warmth. As I was attempting to explain before being shouted over. Lillian half listened while Helena outlined her position, her mind wandering to the small weight low in her abdomen. 6 weeks along, according to the pack healer. A pup. Draven's pup. growing inside her like a secret and a miracle. She hadn't told him yet. Was waiting for the right moment, some quiet evening when they weren't drowning in politics or reform efforts or the constant demands of rebuilding pack systems. Maybe tonight, she thought. After this session ends and we can finally. Voice binder. Hi, Alpha. Thorn's voice pulled her back. Your assessment of the boundary dispute? Lillian focused, using her gift to sense the emotional truth beneath both Alpha's arguments. Not compulsion. Just reading. Understanding. You're both protecting the same thing, she said finally. Pack safety. Territory integrity. Neither of you actually wants conflict, you just don't trust the other to respect boundaries. She looked between them. So here's my suggestion. Joint patrols along the disputed zone. Shared responsibility for maintaining peace. Monthly meetings to address concerns before they become crises. She smiled. And maybe actually talking to each other like rational wolves instead of territorial pups? Both alphas had the grace to look sheepish. The voicebinder's solution is acceptable, Thorn said. Unless either party objects? Silence. Then grudging nods. Excellent. Session adjourned until next week. Thorn stood, gathering his papers. Voicebinder Ashwood, a moment, please? Lillian approached the high alpha, curious and slightly nervous. You're pregnant, Thorn said without preamble. She blinked. How did you? I'm 800 years old. I consent bloodline shifts. His expression softened. Congratulations. The first voicebinder pup in 2 centuries. That's significant. It's terrifying, Lillian admitted. What if they inherit my abilities? What if the council decides they're a threat? What if? Then they'll have the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories as their father and the most formidable voicebinder in history as their mother, Thorn interrupted. I'd pity anyone foolish enough to threaten that child. He smiled, rare and genuine. Go tell your mate, voicebinder. He's been pacing outside the chambers for the last hour. I think he suspects. Lillian found Draven exactly where Thorn predicted, wearing a path in the marble floor, radiating anxiety. Finally, he said, pulling her close. That session ran over. I was about to storm in there and declare an emergency he stopped, studying her face. What's wrong? Are you sick? Did someone threaten you? I'm pregnant, Lillian blurted. Draven froze. What? Pregnant. 6 weeks. There's going to be a pup. Our pup. Growing inside me and probably inheriting all our most stubborn qualities, which means we're going to have our hands full but. He kissed her, cutting off her nervous rambling. When he pulled back, his eyes were suspiciously bright. A pup, he whispered. We're going to have a pup. Are you? Is that okay? I know we didn't plan. It's perfect. His hands framed her face. You're perfect. This whole impossible, beautiful life is perfect. He pressed his forehead to hers. Thank you. For surviving. For trusting me. For building this future with me. Always, Lillian said. For the duration, remember? For the duration, he agreed. And as they stood in council corridors, former enemies turned mates, outcasts turned leaders, broken wolves turned whole. Lillian thought of Finn, of Evelyn, of all the wolves who'd sacrificed so this moment could exist. We did it, she thought. We built the future you died for. And it's beautiful. Somewhere in the distance, wolves howled in greeting to the rising moon. And Lillian Ashwood, healer, voicebinder, queen, howled back. A song of survival. Of love. Of futures worth fighting for. And of stories that, against all odds, had happy endings after all. Hey, beautiful souls. We made it. Can you believe this journey? From that first explosive moment when Lillian told the Alpha King to be quiet, to this, to love, to justice, to new life growing where there was once only grief. This is what epic romance is all about: transformation, redemption, and building futures from ashes. I want to hear from you in the comments. What was your favorite moment? Did you cry during Evelyn's sacrifice? Because I definitely did. Are you ready for baby voicebinder drama and a potential sequel? What other shifter romance stories would you love to see? And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. This channel is growing because of incredible viewers like you who love deep, emotional, addictive romance as much as I do. Every subscription helps me bring you more stories like this one. Drop a comment, share this with your romance-loving friends, and remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is tell the world to be quiet and listen. Until next time, beautiful souls. Keep howling at your own moons. Keep building your own impossible futures. Much love. Wolfface Sparkles.